Chapter 135. Waves of energy rolled and boiled in the room. The air was filled with condensed water droplets of energy, which were thrown out by the vortex in the center and turned back into gas. The girl on the bed flapped her 6 wings repeatedly. Terrifying wind and thunder whistled as she frantically absorbed the rich energy that was rushing towards her. The endless absorption lasted for a full 2 hours before it finally slowed down. At this time, the magic array and mysterious crystal floating in front of her gradually dimmed. Following a crisp shattering sound, it shattered. When the last strand of gentle energy entered her body, Uxion's body became quiet. The whistling wind suddenly disappeared. She slowly landed on the bed. She took a deep breath and suddenly opened her eyes. In her pitch-black eyes, there were 2 very small magic arrays. They looked very strange. The magic arrays in her eyes lasted for a while before they gradually disappeared. Uxion twisted her neck and made a crisp-boned sound. She slightly clenched her hands. A substantial energy made her sigh in relief. 9 extremes, 1 turn. On the side, Yishi also finished her cultivation. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at her. She nodded and said, "Crossing 1 level in half a year is very slow for others. However, your body is already condensed into a crystal. Every time you advance, it will be very troublesome." Uxion helplessly spread out her hands. The energy was too condensed. How could it be my fault? If you can advance to the half-immortal level before the purple night dark flame erupts, the chances of snatching it will be much higher, Yishi softly said as she touched the long hair in front of her. With your current Yuan Li, you can open and maintain a magic array around the 5th grade of the immortal level. As for the divine level, you will still need to use mysterious crystal to maintain it. Moreover, even if you are familiar with it, it will take some time to weave it. Yishi shook her head and thought very seriously. Uxion was still looking at her blankly. She didn't care at all. If there is a bee skin scroll that could be used to inscribe magic arrays. Speaking up to here, Yishi's crescent eyes looked at Uxion on the bed with a smile. Seeing that sweet and charming smile, how could he not know what she was thinking? Uxion scratched her head and also smiled, saying, "All right, let's go out for a walk and buy some things. After cultivating for half a year, I'm also tired." It's only been half a year and you're already saying you're tired. It's normal for gods to go into seclusion for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. It seems like I'll have to grind your temperament a bit. Yishi lightly snorted, causing Uxion to shiver. Uxion smiled and didn't say anything. She held Yishi's hand and walked out of the room. At this moment, only Yu Yin's group and the beautiful woman were sitting in the stone pavilion. 2 pairs of delicate hands were moving up and down on the chessboard. Seeing them playing chess, Yu couldn't help but be stunned. She seemed to remember that day at the Ju Yuan pavilion when she was beaten black and blue by that glowing woman. She didn't disturb them. After walking out of the courtyard, Uxion quickly changed her clothes and her expression changed. That handsome and cold face of hers appeared. She patted her clothes and then pulled Yishi out of the courtyard. Ever since Yin City was divided into 2 sides by that heaven-shocking sword, it had more or less lost some of its prosperity. However, this situation didn't last for long. Very soon, a strong cultivator built a bridge over the abyss so that the other side wouldn't completely wither. After a big change, the area that was cut off was now filled with markets. It became a place for trading. All kinds of precious things could be obtained through trading. Mysterious crystals, talisman seals, immortal ranked bee skins, devil ranked scrolls. Leaning on Yun Nuoxing's chest, Yishi's little head kept moving left and right as she looked at the things on the roadside. There's nothing good. Could it be that this place only has such inferior things? Yishi couldn't help but sigh and shake her head. Although she was only a mortal-ranked little girl, she was originally a strong cultivator of the underworld emperor realm. She kept using that kind of perspective to measure the things around her. This made Yin Nuoxing very speechless. "Oh, little girl, you're quite arrogant." A roadside stall owner heard her muttering laughter and couldn't help but raise his head. Looking at Yi Shi in Yin Nuoxing's arms, he couldn't help but snort coldly. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand. He didn't feel any malicious intent. It seemed that he was just a little annoyed by this sentence. Since that was the case, he didn't bother to say anything. After all, the things on the roadside stalls were really so bad. I'm not afraid of scaring you. I need beast skins or scrolls that can be used to inscribe 7th grade divine ranked arrays. Do you have any? Yishi glanced at the stall owner, then turned her little head and snorted. That person's expression froze. A 7th grade divine ranked beast skin scroll. This little girl was also a grandmaster of magic arrays, and this sentence also made the surrounding people look over curiously. In the end, when they saw who it was, they couldn't help but be stunned. This little girl was a grandmaster of magic arrays. Even if she started cultivating in her mother's womb, she couldn't have reached this level, right? Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and nodded at that person. He hurriedly hugged Yishi tightly and jogged a distance away. He only stopped when they disappeared from those people's sight. Suddenly, Yishi hurriedly patted Yin Nuoxing's chest and pointed at a stall not far away. Brother Nuoxing, over there, Incubus scroll by it. Yin Nuoxing hurriedly stopped and looked over there. Sitting cross-legged behind the stall was an old man. He was recuperating with his eyes closed. There wasn't any aura on his body, just like an ordinary person. And on that stall, there was only a scroll that was tied up. It was dark green all over and was suspended half a foot above the ground. The ink-black light was cold and soul-sucking, as if one's soul would be sucked away just by looking at it. Old man, what is this scroll for? Yin Nuoxing carried Yi Shi to the old man. He squatted down and looked at this one and only item, then looked at the old man and smiled. A 3rd grade divine magic array. However, the old man didn't answer his question. He raised his eyes and glanced indifferently at Yin Nuoxing. He spoke rather coldly, as if he wasn't doing business. So expensive. Isn't this just a lousy scroll? Yin Nuoxing blinked when he felt his clothes being pulled. However, he frowned and muttered as if he was dissatisfied. Lousy scroll? The old man sneered and couldn't help but shake his head. He said, the Ink Abyss scroll can withstand the energy waves of an 8th grade divine magic array or even a 9th grade divine magic array. After saying that, he didn't say anything else. His eyes were somewhat sharp as he stared at Yin Nuoxing, as if mocking him for not knowing the value of the item. Nonsense, of course I know, and it can be used repeatedly. You didn't even tell me the full story. Yin Nuoxing cursed in his heart and rolled his eyes as if he didn't see the old man's gaze. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. I was wondering why he only brought out the Ink Abyss scroll. So he really knows what's good for him. Seeing that he didn't say anything, the old man sneered again and said coldly, Are you buying it or not? If not, then go away. Don't block my business. May I ask if a divine magic array can be carved on it? If it can, then I can still consider it. How many years has it been since I used a 7th grade magic array? Yin Nuoxing held the Ink Abyss scroll in his hand and gently stroked it a few times. He sighed with a disappointed expression. Magic array? The old man was stunned for a moment, and the sharpness in his eyes quickly dissipated. Magic arrays were listed after the 9th grade magic arrays. Other than the magic arrays, there was also a divine magic array. The reason it was listed last was because every magic array and divine magic array was extraordinary. They were much stronger than other divine magic arrays. Back in Xingqiu City, Yin Nuoxing and Yu Yin relied on the magic array to completely suppress the 4 divine underworld experts. They didn't even have the strength to fight back. From this, it could be seen how powerful the magic array was. Moreover, it was under the circumstances that the two of them weren't familiar with it. Perhaps there's something you want in the loft in front. However, this Ink Abyss scroll of mine can't withstand the power of the magic array. So, please, the old man said indifferently. Then, he used his hand to make an inviting gesture and directly asked him to leave. TSK, not fun. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and casually threw a divine thought over. Then, he grabbed the Ink Abyss scroll and flew away. He didn't lack divine magic arrays. You want to scare this old man? It's still too early. Seeing his figure flying away, the old man smiled faintly and shook his head. He took the divine thought and stuffed it into the space between his eyebrows. However, he was shocked and almost threw the divine thought away. Good lad, it's even a third-grade magic array. Could it be that this old man misjudged? But it's indeed a common grade magic array. The old man scratched his head and shook his head. He casually tidied up and walked towards the loft. Brother Nuashing, the gods are all old and cunning people who have lived for a long time. A third-grade divine magic array in exchange for an ink abyss scroll that can be used repeatedly is actually a bargain. Why are you still making a fuss over there? Yishi mumbled as she pinched Yin Nuashing's cheeks with her little hand. Isn't this just a joke? Yin Nuashing rubbed her head and laughed. His footsteps paused. Looking at the huge loft in front of him, Yin Nuashing hesitated for a moment. The piece that was cut off was in the western part of Yuyin City. He had never been here before. As for whether there was such a huge building originally, he was not sure. He felt that it was built later on. Star Sea Pavilion. Yin Nuashing raised his head to look at the huge signboard and read it out loud. Yin Nuashing nodded his head. Just as he was about to step onto the stairs, a figure suddenly flashed in front of him, causing him to stop in his tracks. He raised his head, only to see a purple-clothed youth standing on the stairs in front of him, blocking his path. There was even some indifference on his face. Star Sea Pavilion. Those below the immortal grade are not allowed to enter. The purple-clothed youth said indifferently. He did not even look at Yin Nuashing as he stared at the space in front of him, causing him to frown slightly. He's this old man's guest. Just as Yin Nuashing was about to say something, a calm and emotionless voice sounded behind him, causing him and the purple-clothed youth to turn their gazes. Immediately, they saw that the old man who sold the ink abyss scroll had walked to the former's side. Let's go. The old man glanced at the purple-clothed youth, then placed his hand on Yin Nuashing's shoulder and pulled him into the Star Sea Pavilion. As for the purple-clothed youth, he did not even turn his head. With a flash, he disappeared, causing the old man to widen his eyes. After entering the Star Sea Pavilion, Yin Nuashing smiled faintly and clasped his hands towards the old man. Thank you, old mister. The old man turned his head and glanced at him. There was a strange look in his old eyes, especially when he saw Yishi in his arms. That strange look completely turned into doubt. Seeing the old man's gaze, Yin Nuashing was a little nervous. He hurriedly pressed Yishi's head against his chest and wrapped her small body in his windbreaker. This action caused the old man to be even more stunned. However, he did not think too much about it. He just shook his head and said, "There are many good things in the Star Sea Pavilion. However, the price is also more expensive than outside. I hope you are prepared. The animal skins or scrolls that you want that can be used to carve ceiling arrays are usually on the 4th floor. Only gods can enter there." The old man glanced at Yin Nuashing indifferently. He did not say anything and directly walked up the stairs, causing the latter to smile bitterly. "If you want to take me up there, just say so." Arrogant old man. Yishi also whispered to Yin Nuashing through telepathy. Chapter 136. He followed the old man up the stairs. The center of the Star Ocean Pavilion was a huge, empty space. Looking down, he could see the pitch-black underground. There were a total of 5 floors, and there were countless people trading on each floor. It was very quiet, and there were no unnecessary sounds, nor could he hear the bargaining that he often heard outside. Those who were able to come here were all experienced, and basically, they would not let themselves be at a disadvantage. There were 4 experts guarding each floor, and the vigorous aura of each person made Yin Nuashing feel a little apprehensive. Moreover, every time he walked up a floor, there would be a few detection waves circling around his body, but he did not feel any malicious intent. After strolling to the 4th floor, there were only 2 figures in black robes at the entrance of the passage. They looked very ordinary, but there was an invisible pressure that made Yin Nuashing stop in his tracks. At this moment, he only felt a refreshing aura surge up his body. The old man stood in front of him, his withered hand still holding onto his wrist, and walked in just like that. When the 2 of them passed by, the 2 black-robed figures raised their heads and glanced at Yin Nuashing and Yin Nuashing. Then they lowered their heads again, as if they did not see them. This is the privilege of having strength. Seeing the two gatekeepers ignore him, Yin Nuashing could not help but laugh out loud, causing the old man walking in front to turn around and look at him. Smiling embarrassedly, Yin Nuashing still raised his head and rolled his eyes at him. The old man snorted, but still did not say anything, causing the former to be a little confused. He did not seem to have done anything. Didn't he just buy his incubus? As for bringing him to this place, it couldn't be that they knew each other, right? But it didn't seem like it either. The old man was always indifferent to him. The stall inside, the one with the stinky snake tied to his head. Go there, and I hope you can get something. While Yun Nuashing was letting his imagination run wild, the old man had already led them out of the passage. Then, he gently pushed him with his palm and said softly, "Compared to the 3 floors below, the 4th floor of the Star Ocean Pavilion was not very spacious, but the decorations were extremely meticulous, and it was not as casual as the lower floors. There were even people who inspected it. Light green jade covered the floor, and when one stepped on it, a faint warmth would surge into the soles of their feet, causing their entire body to feel extremely comfortable. There were very few people on this 4th floor that was covered in warm jade. At a glance, there were only a few dozen people, but Yin Nuashing understood that if these people were placed outside, they would all be true experts. There are many people I've seen that night." At this time, Yishi also softly transmitted her voice, causing Yun Nuashing's eyes to focus. Half a year ago, when the Abyss Shrine launched a surprise attack, many experts had gone up to fight, but after that, not many people had seen their figures. He didn't expect to see them here. The appearance of Yin Nuashing and Yishi naturally attracted the attention of some people here. Immediately, some people turned their gazes over, and when they saw the old man beside them, some surprise flashed across their eyes. However, when their gazes landed on Yin Nuashing and Yishi, they were a little stunned. They didn't know which honored guest could be personally invited by this person. Of course, there were some people who were curious, but they all understood the rules here, so they weren't stupid enough to ask or inquire about anything. Even if the girl in the young man's arms looked familiar, it was a taboo to inquire about other people's identities. Looking in the direction that the old man was pointing, Yin Nuashing turned around and smiled at him. She hurriedly walked down the stairs and walked toward the corner. After walking for some distance, she stopped at a corner near the north. At this moment, there was a jade platform here. Curling cold air permeated from the platform and spread out, causing the temperature of the place to drop quite a bit. Beast skins and scrolls were scattered on the jade platform, and some materials were also placed in a corner. They didn't seem to be ordinary items. There were many people surrounding the jade platform. Clearly, they were interested in the things on it. Yin Nuashing's gaze passed over the jade platform and stopped on the gray-clothed old man behind it. The old man was sloppy, and his face was filled with laziness. A large golden snake coiled up from his shoulder all the way to his head. The snake's head rested lazily on his forehead, and he ignored the surrounding onlookers, yawning as if he wanted to swallow this place. "Stinky snake, take out all the top-grade bee skins you have here, and let me have a look." The old man had also followed over at some point. He squeezed his way to the front of the jade platform and said indifferently to the old man with the golden snake, "Pa, it's you again. Don't you always complain that it's too expensive? You're the same as those fellows beside you. Only looking but not buying? You should go down there." Shoo, shoo, shoo. The old man with the golden snake rolled his eyes and spat on the ground beside him without any regard for his image. Seeing this, some of the surrounding people couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. However, it wasn't good to quarrel in this place, so they could only leave resentfully. How valiant! Yin Nuashing and Yishi were speechless. They were both stunned by the attitude of the old man with the golden snake. Their gazes inadvertently fell on the old man's chest. There's an exceptionally dazzling 6-pointed star insignia there. In the middle of the 6-pointed star insignia was the word divine, which made many of the surrounding people envious. The 6-pointed star insignia has the word divine, which is the divine rank. 5 stars, which is the 5th grade. In the ranking system of arrays, the divine rank is the grandmaster rank, and the immortal rank is the great master rank. There are no subdivisions, Yishi whispered. Although there are a few major realms between the Great Master rank and the Great Master rank, it's very difficult to cross this gap. Moreover, Great Master rank array masters have the ability to modify or even create their own arrays. Only when they reach this standard can they be called Great Masters. Then Brother Nuaw, you should focus on your cultivation. Yishi rolled her eyes at him. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. After all, he didn't rely on his own strength to achieve this. He only had this ability because of his eyes. Yin Nuashing's gaze was fixed on the beast skins and scrolls, especially the glazed scroll in the middle for a long time. However, this glazed scroll was next to a scroll that seemed to be cast from gold. Stop looking. There are no fakes here. Do you want to buy it? The old man with the golden snake glanced at Yin Nuashing. Then his gaze paused on Yishi. The golden snake on his head suddenly opened its eyes, flicked out its tongue, and closed its eyes again. The old man saw that the two of them didn't wear their array master insignia and couldn't help but grin. Old bastard, where did you kidnap these two from? Kidnap? Yin Nuashing and Yishi rolled their eyes. Kidnap my ass. Don't compare. Bring out all the good things you have here that can be used to inscribe sealing arrays. The old man rolled his eyes and pointed at Yin Nuashing. He shouted, "This is a big customer." Oh! The old man with the golden snake looked up and glanced at Yin Nuashing. He snorted lightly. If you want a dazzling gold scroll, then an illusion array, divine grade 5 advance array. The one beside it is free. Hearing this, Yin Nuashing frowned. There were very few illusion arrays in the first place, and he wanted one of the grade 5 advance array. This old man really dared to ask for it. He had it in his ring, but he didn't learn it himself. He couldn't give it away. Scrolls that can be used to inscribe divine grade arrays can be used repeatedly. Moreover, they contain special energy that can increase the power of the array. At this point, the higher the grade of the scroll, the more expensive it is. It's not something that the materials used to inscribe immortal grade arrays can compare to. Yishi secretly transmitted her voice. The dazzling gold scroll has the enhancement of the metal element. It's the best choice for inscribing defensive arrays. It also greatly increases the attack power. But isn't a little too expensive? Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. It was fine if he'd already learned it, but if he gave it away without learning it, the price would be too high. It's fine. I have it. I collected quite a few arrays in the past, including some illusion arrays. Let me see which ones I've learned and give them to him. Yishi smiled, as if she didn't care. But let's bargain first. This price is a little unfair. Yin Nuashing understood and nodded. Sir, although the dazzling gold scroll is precious, there are very few illusion arrays in the first place. Furthermore, inscribing an array requires the addition of other materials. Only then can one barely inscribe a sealing array, and there's no guarantee of success. Now, just a piece of paper costs this much. It seems a little, Yin Nuashing said with a smile. When the array was imprinted on the bee skin scroll with various materials, it would become an array diagram. The power released from the array diagram would far surpass the power of the original array. However, the array diagram did not become an array diagram just by inscribing it into a scroll. There was a success rate, and the materials used to inscribe the array diagram was the main factor that affected the success rate. At least you can talk. However, it's reasonable. Then, I'll take a step back. Illusion array, 4th grade high level. If you don't have an illusion array, 5th grade low level is also not a problem. The old man with the golden snake chuckled. Obviously, the so-called 5th grade high-level illusion array was just a prank. Hearing these words, Yin Nuashing and Yishi both nodded their heads. A 4th level illusion department was a condition that they could accept. However, the two of them were not in a hurry to agree. Yishi scurried down from his embrace and also scanned the jade platform. Although the old man with the golden snake's image was not up to standard, it had to be said that the things he was selling were indeed some high-grade goods. The other rare materials also made Yin Nuashing speechless. The price of these materials was probably not lower than the dazzling gold scroll. Yishi was used to it. Her small hand took out a black jade bracelet from somewhere and wore it on her wrist. Her gaze slowly moved. Just as Yin Nuoxing was about to withdraw her gaze suddenly paused. She stared at the corner of the jade platform. There was also a glazed scroll lying quietly on it. If one looked carefully, one could see that there seemed to be some faint, strange patterns on the scroll. That is, Mei Mao also paused on the scroll in the corner like Yin Nuoxing. Mei Mao's small hand could not help but tighten, causing him to tremble. The items on the jade platform all had extraordinary appearances. With a single glance, one could tell that they were all good items. However, this glazed scroll was too ordinary. It did not have any special markings on it, nor did it have any obvious symbol. Yet, it was able to attract the attention of others just by quietly lying there. Could it be? Yishi sucked in a breath of cold air. A trace of seriousness flashed across her eyes. However, this seriousness only existed for a moment before it disappeared. No one saw it. What? Could it be what? Yin Nuoxing could not help but transmit her voice. Yishi turned her head. Her wine-red eyes flickered with extraordinary splendor. It seemed to contain magical power as she looked at Yin Nuoxing, causing his heart to tremble. Soon after, he smiled bitterly. All right, no matter what it was, in short, little she had taken a fancy to it. Chapter 137. Yin Nuoxing's gaze only paused on the glazed scroll for 1 or 2 seconds before he turned away. His palm led his gaze as he slowly walked around the jade platform twice. Along the way, he even picked up 1 or 2 bee skin scrolls and caressed them lovingly, as if he was very interested in them. After a long while, he finally let out a cry of surprise and gently picked up the glazed scroll. When the glazed scroll entered her hand, a faint warmth spread out. This strange feeling seemed to be the unique energy within the scroll. Yin Nuoxing flipped through the scroll with great interest. Her hand gently rubbed the surface of the scroll. The smooth feeling was just like a high-quality jade. If it were not for the extremely faint but extremely complicated patterns drawn on it, no one would treat it as a treasure. Yin Nuoxing was completely unable to understand these complicated patterns. Furthermore, due to the existence of an energy seal on the scroll, she was unable to sense what it was. Little she, what is this? Flipping through the scroll, Yin Nuoxing felt some disbelief. The energy seal did not seem to be man-made, but came with the scroll itself. Regardless of whether he used his evil spirit eye or spiritual strength, he was unable to discover anything strange about the scroll. If it were not for Yi Shi's voice transmission earlier, he probably would not have paid much attention to it. I'm only guessing. As for whether it's true or not, I'm not too sure. I have to undo the energy seal first. Yi Shi gently shook her head and replied. This surprised him. It was extremely rare for her to be interested in something else. Although she felt disbelief in her heart, Yin Nuoxing's face remained extremely calm. From her appearance, it was as if she was only slightly curious about the glazed scroll. With regards to her appearance, the old man with the golden snake merely rolled his eyes and did not say anything. Yin Nuoxing was not the only one interested in the scroll. In the past, there had been quite a few treasure hunters who had come to check it out, but none of them had taken it away. Stop wasting time. The price of this scroll can only be more expensive than that dazzling golden scroll. Scratching his head, the old man with the golden snake said in an understated manner. The hand that was touching the glazed scroll paused. Yin Nuoxing raised her head and glanced at him. Smiling, she said, Is this scroll a formation? It's actually more expensive than that dazzling golden scroll. Who knows? The old man with the golden snake twitched his mouth and threw out an answer that made Yin Nuoxing's face twitch. Yin Nuoxing did not know whether to laugh or cry. This old fellow was truly impressive. He could even give such an answer so confidently. At that moment, the surrounding people could not help but laugh at the old man with the golden snake's answer. Clearly, they had rarely seen such an outrageous stall owner. However, although I don't know what exactly this scroll is, I do know that this scroll came from the hands of God. The old man with the golden snake glanced at the people who were laughing, then said with a chuckle. As soon as he said that, the surrounding laughter suddenly stopped. Many surprised and doubtful gazes were fixed on the scroll in Yin Nuoxing's hand. Everyone knew that no matter what it was, as long as it was related to the word God, it would definitely be something very powerful. However, they still found it a little hard to believe that this scroll, which looked ordinary except for its gorgeous colors, would be related to a god. TSK, why do you have such good taste? Compared to the surprise of these people, Yishi could not help but smack her lips when she heard the old man with the golden snake's words. Her little hand gripped Yin Nuoxing's windbreaker tightly. She did not expect this old fellow to have such sharp eyes. As a high-level god, she only knew about it after sensing a little fluctuation of divinity. However, the old man with the golden snake in front of her did not have such fluctuations of divinity. It seemed that this old man with the golden snake's eyesight was also quite good. God. Yin Nuoxing was a little surprised, but it was not to the extent that he could not accept it. After all, he had many things related to the gods on him. I wonder what makes you think that this thing is related to ancient times. Although he said that, at this moment, Yin Nuoxing still had to pretend that he did not care. He casually placed the glazed scroll on the table, turned his gaze to the old man with the golden snake, and said with a smile, "Because I can tell which god the energy seal and the lines in this scroll belong to. Of course, I can't break the energy seal. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put it up for sale." The old man with the golden snake rolled his eyes and said, "Anyway, this is a god's item. It's up to you whether you want to buy it or not." In response to the old man with the golden snake's answer, everyone present looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. How could this kind of thing be decided by just one side of the story? No wonder it had been left here for so long and no one had asked about it. Yin Nuoxing also felt a little helpless in the face of this neurotic old fellow. He shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Then what about the price? How would you like to exchange it, old mister?" An advanced 7th grade god-level array. There are no restrictions on the type. The old man with the golden snake chuckled and stared at Yin Nuoxing with spirited eyes. It was rare for someone to be interested in this kind of thing. Hearing this, the surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air. This old fellow was asking for an exorbitant price. An advanced 7th grade god-level array was rare even in the realm of the gods. Such a high-level array was always hidden. Who would be willing to take it out for an exchange? Brother, no, forget it. It wasn't just them. Even Yishi had a bitter expression and shook her head. She had a 7th grade god-level array, but she couldn't bear to take it out. Such a high-level array was difficult to learn completely. Even a 7th grade grandmaster would need a long time to comprehend it. No one was willing to take it out for an exchange. Yin Nuoxing also smiled bitterly and shook his head. He looked at the glazed scroll with pity and said, "It's too expensive, too expensive. Even if it's as you said, that this is something left behind by the gods, I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe I'll only see a blank piece of paper after trying my best to unlock the energy seal. This is a gamble, and I can't afford to take it. I'd better exchange it for this dazzling golden scroll." Yin Nuoxing sighed and took out a scroll from his pendant. Before he could place it on the jade platform, another scroll fell on the jade platform first. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He turned his head and saw Yishi smiling at him. Her pearl-like white teeth were very dazzling. Yin Nuoxing shook his head helplessly. "Old sir, this is the 9-palace dragon trapping array. I'm sure many people have heard of it before. This is the original 9 dragons array. It can be listed as an advanced 4th grade array. It's very famous. Even divine underworld experts who aren't good at soul detection can't escape from it. It's not a loss to exchange it for this dazzling golden scroll, right?" Yishi smiled. The 9-palace dragon trapping array was a kind of strange illusion array. It contained a strand of the soul of the 9 dragons. There was also a soul attack in the illusion array. If one wasn't good at soul power, they would be trapped to death. Moreover, the most special thing was that this array could be embedded with 9 other arrays. This was the explanation of the 9-palace. It was an extremely strange array. Other illusion arrays rarely had such a function. If one wanted it to display the effect of other arrays, they would have to personally modify it, just like what Yin Nuoxing did. "What do you mean by initial?" Yin Nuoxing rubbed Yishi's head and transmitted his voice to her. The modification and transformation of arrays is something that array masters do the most. The 9-palace dragon trapping array can be embedded with 9 arrays. It can also be modified, fused, or placed together. The initial grade of the 9 dragons array will also change according to the power of the arrays embedded. The 9 dragons array that I cultivate is currently at the advanced 7th grade. However, there are still 2 more palaces that haven't been embedded with arrays. If one wants to change its grade, the arrays embedded must be powerful enough, Yishi explained. Therefore, she didn't have to worry about whether the old man with the golden snake would accept the 9 dragons array that she took out. As expected, when the words 9-palace dragon trapping formation entered the golden snake old man's ears, shock swiftly surged onto his face. He quickly grabbed a scroll and opened it. After carefully looking at it for a moment, he hurriedly rolled it up. It really is the 9 dragons array. In just a few moments, he saw the obvious signs. The eyes of the old man with the golden snake immediately lit up. This 9 dragons array was a rare illusion array. High rank 4 was only its initial level. If it was embedded with 9 strange arrays, it would be able to increase its level by a large amount. Its power would also increase along with it. If the arrays were chosen well, it could even have up to 10 different effects. Of course, for things like arrays, if one had learned them before, it wouldn't be a big deal to pass them on to others. However, if one hadn't learned them before, it would be a little painful. Not a bad array. Little girl, you're quite generous. Not simple. The old man with the golden snake smiled as he looked at Yishi. A strange expression flashed across his face. He immediately put away the 9 dragons array scroll and looked at the 2 of them with a fiery gaze. Yin Nuashing smiled and took the dazzling golden scroll from the jade platform. She stuffed it into the pendant and directly ignored the old man's fiery gaze. She gently picked up Yishi and turned to leave. Hey, wait. Seeing that Yin Nuashing and Yishi were about to leave, the old man with the golden snake couldn't hold it in any longer and hurriedly called out. Yin Nuashing tilted her head and looked at the old man with the golden snake in confusion. She said, "Is there something you need, sir?" Kid, you don't want this scroll anymore? I can guarantee you that this thing is definitely a divine item. I can even tell which divine item it belongs to. The old man with the golden snake gently caressed the glazed scroll and said very enthusiastically, "Sign." Yin Nuashing glanced at the glazed scroll in the old man's hand and said with some regret, "I can't afford it. No one would be willing to take out a 7th grade divine level array." It wasn't that he didn't have it, but there were many things in the ring that he hadn't studied. He couldn't give away things that he hadn't learned. The old man with the golden snake rubbed his hands and said with a chuckle, Forget it. This old man will take a step back. I don't want a 7th grade high-level array. Give me 2 6th grade high-level arrays, and I'll give it to you. How about it?" Hearing this, Yin Nuashing was startled and frowned. There was some hesitation on his face. He also had a 6th grade high-level array. Although it wasn't as high level as a 7th grade array, it was still quite valuable. Using it to exchange for this glaze scroll was still a little over his bottom line. After all, he hadn't learned it before. "Brother Nuo, why don't I make the exchange?" Yishi couldn't help but ask when she saw the hesitation on Yin Nuashing's face. She patted his chest with her small hand and couldn't help but ask. "I heard that it's very difficult to completely understand a 5th grade array and above. Moreover, every array recorded on a scroll has its own mysteries. Are you willing to part with it?" Yin Nuashing whispered. Hearing this, Yishi smiled bitterly and shook her head. She had a 6th grade high-level array, but just as Yin Nuashing said, she couldn't bear to trade it. After all, it was very difficult to completely understand it. However, seeing that he was so concerned about that scroll, she also wanted to help him get it. Seeing that Yin Nuashing didn't speak, the old man with the golden snake thought that he was unwilling. He immediately gritted his teeth and actually took out a jade box. The jade box emitted a trace of coldness. Inside, it was actually a roll of blue animal skin. Moreover, the quality of this animal skin looked even better than the dazzling gold scroll just now. A map made from the skin of a nether abyss shark. This is equivalent to the softest skin of a demonic beast at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld. Since you want the dazzling gold scroll, you should also want to refine a ceiling array diagram. Using this as a map to refine a ceiling array diagram will have a 30% higher success rate than using the dazzling gold scroll. If you are willing to exchange 2 6-grade arrays for that scroll, I will add this. What do you think? Seeing this, Yin Nuoxing's face also showed a hint of determination and nodded firmly. Seeing this, the old man with the golden snake beamed with joy. Actually, this was also his bottom line. It was rare to meet someone who was interested in the glazed scroll. He also wanted to fight for it. Use a ceiling array diagram in exchange for everything here, as well as 10 maps that are not inferior to the skin of a nether abyss shark. Also, tell me which deity created this scroll. Yin Nuoxing's indifferent voice made the surrounding people hold their breaths for a moment. The old man with the golden snake was even more stunned. Such a high price made his heart beat fiercely. However, no one could deny that the price of a ceiling array diagram was ranked below the 9th grade divine rank only, because every ceiling array diagram was unique and difficult to imitate or break. The price could only be higher than the 9th grade divine rank. After the initial shock, the old man's eyes spun quickly as he weighed the price between the two. Yin Nuoxing didn't disturb him and stood quietly. However, Yi Shi's eyes widened as if she was frightened. She even tugged at the old man's collar. After a long while, the old man with the golden snake took a deep breath. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Yin Nuoxing. He nodded heavily and said, "Okay." Seeing the old man with the golden snake's excited appearance, Yin Nuoxing also smiled slightly. A strand of divine sense swept out from between her eyebrows and entered the old man's mind. Then, she put everything on the table into the pendant. Finally, her hand reached out to grab the glazed scroll. Just as Yin Nuoxing's hand touched the scroll, a purple trident quickly inserted itself into the scroll like a bolt of lightning and clamped it. At the same time, a faint laugh was also slowly heard. "Ha, little brother, I've also taken a fancy to this scroll. I wonder if you can part with it?" When the purple trident appeared, the smile on Yin Nuoxing's face slowly disappeared. A chill surged in her pitch-black eyes. Chapter 138. Yin Nuoxing's gaze paused on the purple trident before he slowly tilted his head. Behind him was a young man in blue robes. The young man had a warm smile on his face, but no matter how one looked at it, his smile was filled with an evil charm, which made Yin Nuoxing feel extremely displeased. There were 3 young men following closely behind the blue-clothed young man. Yin Nuoxing's gaze swept past the 3 of them, and his eyes narrowed slightly. The 2 young men standing at the very back had majestic auras that were as vast as the ocean, and there were also some unique undulations. They were actually god-level experts, and the young man standing at the very front caused Yin Nuoxing's heart to palpitate. Shunming, the young man had his arms crossed. His face was filled with indolence, and he was no different from an ordinary person. However, the aura that made him feel as if he was facing an abyss made Yin Nuoxing feel that it was similar to Jin Wang and the others. Clearly, this person's strength had definitely reached the Shunming level. The sudden intervention of the blue-clothed young man caused numerous surprised gazes to be cast over. When these people saw the 3 young men behind the blue-clothed young man, surprise flashed through their eyes. To be able to bring such a lineup when they were outside, especially when Yin City was currently extremely chaotic, it seemed that this group of people had a powerful background. "Ha, little brother, I can pay you double the price you've offered, but can you give me the scroll?" The blue-clothed young man smiled at Yin Nuoxing, but the trident in his hand still held onto the scroll, showing no signs of moving away. "Can you afford it? 2 ceiling formations?" Yin Nuoxing cursed in his heart as he stared at the blue-clothed young man. A moment later, he slowly shook his head and sighed. "You can't afford it, so I can't." As his voice fell, a finger-sized formation appeared on his fingertip. He flicked it at the purple trident with lightning speed, and an extremely terrifying force suddenly erupted, causing the trident to fly away. His hand was like lightning as he once again grabbed at the glazed scroll. Yin Nuashing's sudden attack caused the blue-clothed young man's eyes to turn cold. The instant he reacted, he grabbed the trident with his wrist and twisted it slightly. The slender tip of the trident was like a blade as it sliced horizontally at Yin Nuashing's hand. The sharp force seemed to contain some icy water element, causing the air to become damp. Yin Nuashing coldly laughed at the blue-clothed young man's swift and fierce counterattack. With a thought, a formation that was several feet wide suddenly stood in front of him. His palm contained a tremendous force as it swept across the scroll and then suddenly turned around. His palm imprinted the formation, bringing with it a majestic force as it viciously smashed the tip of the trident. Bang! A deep sound resounded. Under Yin Nuashing's palm, the trident was directly sent flying. Without waiting for the blue-clothed young man to withdraw his hand, a formation with surging energy blasted towards the blue-clothed young man's face like a volcanic eruption. Facing the strange formation of the Yun Nuo planet, the blue-clothed young man's face sank with a hint of surprise. However, at this moment, he could only hurriedly retreat and tilt his head. Only then was he able to dodge the energy beam. How dare you? When the blue-clothed young man retreated, the two old gods standing behind him also had slightly darkened expressions. They took a step forward and appeared in front of the blue-clothed young man. Their palms were like ghost claws as they silently grabbed at Yin Nuashing's shoulders. Scram! Just as the two of them made their move, a slender halberd suddenly shot out from Yin Nuashing's sleeve. He grabbed it with his palm and then swept it toward the two ghost claws. Be careful! Faced with the attack that was so calm that there wasn't the slightest fluctuation, the indolent young man, who hadn't moved all this while, had a slight change in his expression. He clenched his fists and the space directly distorted, causing Yin Nuashing and the two old gods to stagger. Although the direction of the attack had been distorted, after Yin Nuashing stabilized herself, two long swords suddenly shot out from the space behind her and shot towards the two old gods. In an instant, the swords rushed towards their faces. The two old gods were immediately startled as a layer of energy barrier appeared in front of them. Soon after, the two long swords ruthlessly pierced into the barrier and shattered it. The two old gods took advantage of this opening and hurriedly retreated. What? You want to cause trouble? After teaching the two old men a lesson, Yin Nuashing withdrew the two long swords. He glanced at the blue-clothed young man and the old man who had distorted space and said indifferently. After the two young men were pulled back by the indolent young man, they discovered that cold sweat had appeared on their foreheads. Although the two of them were quite strong, they could naturally sense the terror of the two long swords. At that moment, they didn't even dare to make a sound. 3 high-grade divine artifacts. Who was this young man? The blue-clothed young man looked at Yin Nuashing with a slightly heavy gaze. After a moment, he suddenly smiled and said to Yin Nuashing, I'm Yu Zhong of the Snow God Sect. May I know your name? Snow God Sect? Hearing this, Yin Nuashing was confused. The forces in the divine world were intricate and complicated, especially now that people from all over the world had gathered in Yuyan City. People from all 5 major regions had gathered here. Some forces were very low-key, and their strength wasn't much weaker than those first-rate forces other than the 9 deity temples or the 8 ancient families. She didn't know where this so-called Snow God Sect was located, how strong it was, and what its reputation was. I'm sorry, I've never heard of it. May I know which corner of the divine world you're located in? Yin Nuashing shook his head and sighed, but the surrounding people couldn't help but laugh. The blue-clothed young man's expression became even more gloomy. As for this lord, I don't have any reputation, so there's no need for you to worry. As for this scroll, I've taken a liking to it. Moreover, you can't afford the original price. Twice the price is pure nonsense. Yin Nuashing didn't know what the hell this Snow God Sect was, but there was no need for him to know. He wasn't even afraid of the 9 deity temples back then, let alone this Snow God Sect that popped out of nowhere. The Snow God Sect is quite famous in the Taiyuan region, but now there's someone who hasn't even heard of it. Didn't they boast that everyone, from 3-year-old children to gods, knows about the snow god sect? Today, it seems that these words are a little harsh to the ears. Hearing the mocking words of Yin Nuoxing and the surrounding people, a faint gloominess flashed across Yu Zhong's face. Those who could come to the 4th floor of the Star Ocean Pavilion weren't weak, so it was impossible for everyone to be afraid of the snow god sect. He sneered and turned his gaze to the old man with the golden snake. Previously, Yin Nuoxing's palm had swept across the air, causing the scroll to fall into the latter's hands. "Give that scroll to me. No matter what price he offers, I'll pay 3 times the price." Yu Zhong's rich and overbearing words caused a trace of coldness to flash across Yin Nuoxing's eyes. This guy was really insatiable. The old man with the golden snake gently rubbed the scroll in his hand and looked at Yin Nuoxing and Yu Zhong with interest. A moment later, he smiled and threw the glazed scroll to Yin Nuoxing under Yu Zhong's gloomy gaze. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Everything has a first-come, first-served basis. This old man isn't a greedy person. Since I've already accepted the item, I won't sell it to anyone else. Moreover, he's right. You can't even afford the original price, let alone 3 times the price." After saying that, he ignored Yu Zhong and took out 20 beast skins and scrolls from somewhere. He slapped them on the table and winked at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing understood and quickly put away the glazed scroll. She also put away the 20 scrolls on the table and smiled at the old man with the golden snake. "Thank you, old mister." The old man with the golden snake waved his hand and said, "This is the territory of the Star Sea Pavilion. I don't believe that anyone can behave so atrociously here. Even the people from a 9-deity hall haven't caused any trouble here. Who does your snow god sect think you are?" An ugly expression surged onto Yu Zhong's feminine face when he heard the words of the golden serpent old man. His eyes were ice-cold as he glanced at the old man, after which he turned towards Yin Nuoxing and coldly said, "What is your bid?" Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh when she looked at Yu Zhong as if she was looking at a fool. "A sealing array, are you satisfied?" "That's right, a sealing array. Little brother, if you want that scroll, you'll have to take out 3 pieces. The Snow God sect is a big sect. Taking out 3 sealing arrays is just a matter of clenching their teeth and closing their eyes. It won't be difficult." As Yin Nuoxing's voice fell, many people around laughed and jeered, causing Yu Zhong's face to turn red and green. His Snow God sect really didn't have something as unique as a sealing array. He thought that Yin Nuoxing would only pay a divine grade 4th or 5th grade array. He thought that he could just throw out 2 divine grade arrays. His sect could still afford such a price, but he didn't expect that it would be a sealing array. "Mister, the more friends you have, the more options you have. It's not wise to offend people for some unclear things," Yu Zhong said coldly. Yin Nuoxing sighed and shook her head. She looked at Yu Zhong with eyes full of pity and said in a low voice, "What's wrong? Now that you know that you're embarrassingly short of money, you want to use the power behind you to threaten others? Being friends with such a person, I'm quite worried they'll be sold off after I've used them up. So, please turn around. If one day I'm done with my research, perhaps I can give them to you for free." As soon as she finished speaking, she sighed again and cupped her hands at the old man with the golden snake. Then, she lifted her feet and walked towards the stairs. Oof. As soon as Yin Nuoxing lifted her feet, the 2 young men who had suffered losses moved horizontally again and blocked her path. A terrifying aura quietly filled the air. With her path blocked, the faint smile on Yin Nuoxing's face slowly disappeared. A silver light slowly appeared in her sleeve. Buzz! However, before she could pull out the Linghong sword, a huge array suddenly formed beneath her feet and enveloped Yin Nuoxing, Yu Zhong, and the 3 young men. A destructive energy slowly surged out from the array beneath her feet like a tide. "That's enough. Are you tired of living trying to snatch something from me?" Yishi's wine-red eyes coldly stared at the 2 people blocking her path. Killing intent surged in her slightly childish voice. The people on this floor were also attracted by the sudden eruption of the destructive energy, causing everyone to be slightly stunned. The people who were able to come here were all god experts. Which one of them didn't have extremely high standards? God Underworld experts were also commonly seen, but God Underworld experts that were able to possess this kind of terrifying power seemed to be rare. Faced with the terrifying aura beneath his feet, the Godhead expert's entire body turned icy cold. It was as if a single strand of aura would surge out and instantly turn him into ashes. Under such pressure, the two young men instinctively moved aside because they faintly knew that if they were really done for, then perhaps all of them would disappear without a trace today. A mere godhead. What kind of trash is the Snow God sect? I've never even heard of it. The wine-red eyes indifferently glanced at the Godhead expert. That gaze seemed to carry 1,000 pounds of pressure, causing the Godhead expert to tremble and his back to become wet. This aura, an underworld emperor expert, the Godhead expert swallowed with difficulty. From the array, he already understood many things. His pitch-black eyes indifferently glanced at Yuzhong, who was narrowing his eyes. He lightly snorted and said in a low voice, "Don't provoke people for no reason. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died." As his voice fell, he was too lazy to care about Yuzhong's cold expression. He turned around and walked towards the stairs, patting Yishi's head. Yuzhong gloomily looked at the backs of Yin Nuoxing's group. When they disappeared from his sight, the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. "Young Master Yu, it's better not to care about these people, lest you get into trouble." How could the Godhead expert not know what Yuzhong was thinking when he looked over? He couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Yuzhong coldly sneered, "Investigate. Being threatened. This is the first time this young master has encountered such a thing. Interesting. I'd like to see who doesn't know how they died." Chapter 139. Yin Nuoxing and Yi Qingtang walked down the 4th floor unhurriedly. When they stepped out of the Star Ocean Pavilion, Yin Nuoxing stomped his foot and let out a long breath. He lowered his head and looked at Yishi, who had a serious expression on her face. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Little Shi, your aura is not bad, but don't worry. If anything happens, just blame it on the 9 deities temple. Seeing how much Jin Wang and the others value you, Exen, they should be able to handle this." Hearing this, Yishi raised her head and rolled her eyes at him. She sighed and said, "I don't care about that Snow God sect or Fire God sect. It's just a small Shunming. No matter what, I was once the emperor of the underworld. Once. Now, I'm indeed a little worried." Yin Nuoxing rubbed her hair and said with a faint smile, "It's okay. Even if the sky falls, I will hold it up for little Shi." Based on Yin Nuoxing's current situation, relying on the speed of the light element and the Ling Hong sword, he could kill a divine king in an instant. If he really went crazy, once the 10,000 spirits killing array was released, he could throw a bunch of divine weapons over and smash a Shunming expert to death. Moreover, there was a former emperor of the underworld expert beside him, and she was also an array master. Even without the help of divine energy, she could set up a super array with just her spirit and soul. It would probably be no problem for her to deal with a king of the underworld expert. Yishi sighed and shook her head. "No, I forgot how to temporarily keep the unused array in my hand. I'm a little worried." Yin Nuoxing, seeing her lowering her head in deep thought and constantly rubbing her fingers, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh. In essence, she was still an old monster of unknown age, but seeing that she looked no different from a little girl, he also deliberately treated her like a child. Today, when he saw the aura of a superior that came from her bones and her current deep thoughts, he seemed to feel that the distance between them was very far. However, he didn't want to guess what Yishi was thinking. After walking out of the Star Ocean Pavilion, he walked towards the bridge that connected the west side of the trading area. Not far away, he saw 2 familiar figures. He couldn't help but smile and walk towards them. "Seems like there's trouble." He looked through the crowd and saw a snow-white figure and a pitch-black figure. He also heard a clear and angry voice. He couldn't help but shake his head. He hugged Yishi tightly and quickly walked toward the commotion. A moment later, he squeezed into the crowd and looked inside. "Emotion, don't go too far. Don't think that just because your Snow God sect is in Yuyin City, you can do whatever you want. The white-clothed figure angrily berated as she pointed at the leader of the group of blue-clothed men. Hee, I wouldn't have thought that Fairy Shui could be so beautiful even when she's angry. But you're wrong today. In the trading zone, the highest bidder wins. If I can pay more than you, the item will naturally be mine. Even if I bring this matter back to the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, nobody will care. The blue-clothed man only chuckled at Shui Qing's reprimand. After speaking, he turned his head and shouted at the owner of the stall, I'll pay 500,000 gold coins for this pile of galactic sand. Are you selling it or not? Hearing Imo Xian shout, the stall owner was startled. He was pleasantly surprised and worried at the same time. This galactic sand was collected from meteorites and was a relatively rare material. However, this was just a handful of it. At most, it would cost around 250,000 yuan. He didn't expect that this prodigal son would actually buy it with double the price. He had no reason to refuse, but it was Shui Qing and Murong Shuige who came first, which put him in a difficult position. Shui Qing's beautiful face was ashen as she watched Mo Xian pick up the galactic sand and throw it away with a complacent face. Shui Qing fiercely gritted her teeth, while Murong Shuige rolled her eyes. Since the battle in Yuyan City half a year ago, Murong Shuige had found a friend to help her forge a weapon. She just happened to see the newly built trading zone and found the galactic sand. She didn't expect that just as she negotiated the price with the stall owner, this guy would appear like a ghost. Mo Xian had been to the Divine Prefecture to gain experience and fell in love with Fairy Shui at first sight. However, Fairy Shui was not interested in him at all, so his pursuit of her naturally ended in failure. She did not know how many suitors she had, but she had never seen such a pestering guy. After being rejected several times in private and in public, he finally became extremely unhappy. Every time he saw her, he would find ways to make trouble for her. Later, Mo Xian returned to the Snow God sect and thought that they would never see each other again. She did not expect that they would meet again after 3 years. It was said that enemies often cross paths. Seeing the Snow God sect behind him, she wanted to beat him several times but failed. However, Shui Qing obviously underestimated the viciousness of this sticky candy. She blindly tolerated it, which made Mo Xian a little insatiable. This situation was actually not the first time. Therefore, when she wanted to let go of Murong Shuige's hand, the latter couldn't help but want to fight. Shuige, beat him up. Taking a deep breath, looking at Mo Xian's increasingly disgusted and complacent face, Shui Qing fiercely gritted her teeth and loosened her grip on Murong Shuige's jade-like hand. She couldn't bear it anymore. Murong Shuige tapped her chin, and an ethereal aura quietly spread out. Just as she was about to make a move, a faint laughter suddenly came from the crowd. 1 million for this galactic sand. As the laughter rang out, the surrounding crowd was also startled. They hurriedly turned their gazes and saw a young man wearing an extremely long black windbreaker who was hugging a little girl with short wine-red hair. Immediately, many people were stunned. The expressions on their faces changed. A group of people looked at Yin Nuoxing and the other person with pity, while another kind of gaze was fear. They all looked at the girl with a deep expression on her pretty face, and a trace of fear involuntarily spread out from their hearts. Young Master Yin, seeing the person who came, Shui Qing was stunned for a moment. Then, she immediately bloomed a beautiful smile that could turn all living things upside down. She chuckled and said, "We haven't seen each other since you left that day. Is everything all right? Brother, we haven't seen each other for half a year. Is the one you're holding?" The aura on Murong Shuige's body disappeared with a whoosh. However, looking at Yi Shi, who was deep in thought, his handsome face became a little dark, and his cheeks couldn't help but twitch. No one asked about it. Can't you not mention it? Yin Nuoxing looked at him and waved her hand with a wry smile. She looked at Shui Qing and said, "I didn't expect Shui Qing to say such bold words." Hearing this, both of them blushed and couldn't help but scratch their heads. "Nuoxing, I know it's not good to be nosy and ask about other people's private life. But why are you with her? Isn't this the underworld emperor expert from half a year ago?" Isn't she the Lord of the Abyss Shrine, or something? Why is she with young Master Yin? Could it be that the two of you are old lovers? Shui Qing and Shui Gu hurriedly came to Yin Nuoxing's ears and whispered each other. Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Didn't she say not to say anything even if they recognized her? Didn't they see that so many people were watching? Everyone present, or rather, those who had witnessed the great battle in Yuyin City half a year ago, recognized Yishi. Just now, in the Star Ocean Pavilion, so many experts looked at her strangely, but didn't say anything. However, these two fellows did. Oh? Why? Do you want to interfere and put on a good show? When Yin Nuoxing said the first sentence, Mo Xian's face gradually darkened. Seeing the three of them chatting as if he didn't exist, he let out a strange laugh and grabbed the galactic sand in his hand. He sneered. This young master has already bought this. You can go wherever you want to go. I won't send you off. By the way, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, there will be another grave in Yuyin City. At that time, I will help you take care of your little sister. The people from the Snow God sect only know how to use their power to bully others. The young master of your clan has already said such words to me. I did not expect that another person would be so unbearable. Seeing that arrogant and domineering face, Yin Nuoxing laughed faintly. He raised his hand and pointed it at the distant Mo Xian. Immediately, he clenched his hand and a suction force forcefully snatched the pile of galactic sand over. Bastard, you're courting death. Seeing Yin Nuoxing suddenly make a move, Mo Xian's face instantly turned ugly. With a furious roar, he waved his hand, and the dozen or so men beside him pounced at Yin Nuoxing like fierce tigers. Bang! Yin Nuoxing calmly looked at the dozen or so men pouncing towards him. With a gentle flick of his finger, a large array suddenly formed. Soon after, it directly smashed onto the bodies of the dozen or so people. The powerful force directly sent them flying backwards. Finally, they heavily smashed into the crowd outside, bringing about a wave of howls and exclamations. Brother Yin, we haven't seen each other for half a year. Your attainments in arrays have improved again. Murong Shui Gu clapped her hands and smiled faintly. Seeing the dozen or so men being defeated in the blink of an eye, Mo Xian was shocked. Just as he was about to curse, a black light suddenly lit up in front of him. Wine-red short hair fluttered in the wind. A small jade-like hand touched the black array in front of him. An indifferent voice slowly sounded in his ears, causing him to break out in cold sweat. You want to take care of me? Looking at the girl's extremely cold wine-red eyes, Mo Xian was so scared that he couldn't even speak. Tears and snot flowed down his face. It hadn't been long since they arrived in Yuyin City, but the battle half a year ago had caused an uproar. Now, it had become a hot topic after tea and meals. Even these outsiders had heard of it many times. Combining the reactions of the surrounding people and Yishi's short wine-red hair, he seemed to have understood something. Nether, Emperor. Mo Xian was so frightened that his face turned blank. Just as he finished muttering to himself, a black flame suddenly erupted from the pitch-black array. The black flame was like an angry dragon. Under the horrified gazes of the people in the trading area, Mo Xian was swallowed whole. Mo Xian didn't even have time to scream before he was burned like a piece of paper and disappeared in an instant. His dozen or so men were so scared that they couldn't even speak. A wisp of astonishment flashed through the hearts of the surrounding people when they saw that Yishi had annihilated Mo Xian with a casual strike. They swallowed their saliva and took a few steps back, leaving Yin Nuoxing and the others standing there motionlessly. Mo Xian had just reached the half-immortal realm. Compared to the Nether Emperor expert, he was still too weak. After the shock, everyone looked at Yishi with eyes full of fear. They could still remember the scene half a year ago when the Abyss Shrine made a strong comeback. Countless people had a trip to the gates of hell. If it weren't for the joint forces of all the experts in Yuyin City, everyone here would have probably gone to the underworld to report. Their gazes paused on Yishi for a while. Then they cast strange gazes at Yin Nuoxing. This guy, He was the one who seriously injured Yi Shi and even took her corpse to be buried. How did the two of them change from enemies to this after not seeing each other for half a year? Moreover, they didn't feel that suffocating aura from Yi Shi's body. However, no one would know what happened that day. Yin Nuoxing also wouldn't explain. Since she came out, she didn't want to hide anything. Yi Shi's matter couldn't be hidden forever. Chapter 140. She's still the emperor of the underworld. Under the fearful gazes of the people in the trading area, Yin Nuoxing pulled Xueqing and the other two and turned to leave. He glanced sideways at the dozen or so guards who were wailing nonstop not far away as a cold light flashed across his eyes. He did not destroy them, as there was no need for him to do so. If the Snow God sect wanted to cause trouble, he would accompany them. Finally, Yin Nuoxing couldn't stand the gazes from the crowd. With a flash of her 6 wings, Yin Nuoxing brought the two away from the noisy place. The three of them flew out of the crowded trading area and finally stopped. Murong Shuego looked at Yi Shi and couldn't help but ask. That day, the three of them were present. He also saw Yi Shi killing her. Later, he heard the conversation between Yin Nuoxing and Jin Wang and heard the news of her death. However, now that she appeared in front of Xueqing and Murong Shuego again, they were a little surprised. Yes and no. Yin Nuoxing let go of her hand and looked down at Yi Shi, who had been silent. She shook her head and whispered, "As the Abyss Shrine, she's already dead. The one here now is Yi Shi, not her from that night." Hearing Yin Nuoxing's vague explanation, Xueqing and Murong Shuego looked at each other and nodded. "We understand, but we don't seem to understand. We probably know what you're trying to say." Murong Shuego nodded. They didn't sense any divinity from Yi Shi, and her cultivation was only ordinary. She wasn't the emperor of the underworld who was high and mighty that night. What happened here was the turning point for their relationship to change, right? You want this galactic sand. Are you going to use it to refine weapons? Yin Nuoxing stopped and threw the bag of galactic sand to Murong Shuego and asked, "Yes, I want to refine a zither. The Xian method and secret method I practice contains music. It's suitable for a zither." Murong Shuego nodded and smiled bitterly. "I've got the dragon whale's whiskers and the sky dragon's whiskers. They're all very advanced materials. As for the last main material, I chose the galactic sand. My friend is a rank 7 blacksmith, so the materials he chose are very advanced. I don't know if he has collected other materials." Hearing that his friend was a 7th level forger, Yin Nuoxing glanced at him with some surprise. The 7th level was the beginning of the initial god level for forgers. It was very rare in the Taiyuan region. Obviously, this friend of Murong Shuego should be his teacher or elder, and Yin Nuoxing could understand why they needed the galactic sand. "Young Master Yin, I have received a message from the Ice and Snow Mountain Manor. The Purple Night Flame might erupt in a year or half a year. At that time, Yuyin City might cease to exist. I hope you can prepare for it. We will go into seclusion for a period of time. After we finish building the zither, it will take about half a year. Let's go to the Jiyuan Pavilion for a chat. Don't forget." Looking at the backs of the two people leaving, the words of the two still lingered in his ears. Yin Nuoxing nodded gently and muttered in his heart, "You have to survive, you two idiots. I will go that day." The eruption of the Purple Night Dark Flame would threaten everyone in Yuyin City. At that time, no matter if they were there intentionally or not, they would be affected. Once that kind of world-destroying divine item exploded, even a god would have to retreat. It would be really difficult for these mortal realm and half-immortal realm little fellows to survive to see this splendid firework. After changing their identities outside, the two people rushed into the secret chamber as soon as they returned to the 9 Divine Palaces Manor. Jin Wang and the others were still training the 9 elites. The miserable screams made Yin Nuoxing's hair stand on end. In Yi Shi's world of evolution, the two people were sitting on a slanted grassland. The glazed scroll that they had just obtained was floating in front of them. The scroll flickered with a glazed light like a flickering lamp. If one looked carefully, one would see streaks of bright white patterns on the surface of the scroll. They were like earthworms that covered the entire surface of the scroll. It was a very strange pattern. Kid, this scroll was left behind by God in the ancient era. You should know how powerful a person was to be given the title of a god. That person's title was the Glazed God. Don't ask me how I know. When you start studying this scroll, you will know it too. Thinking back to when he left, the laughter of the old man with the golden snake echoed in his mind. Yin Nuoxing's gaze became a bit blank as he stared at the scroll, which was so ordinary that it appeared to be extremely strange. He slowly engraved the patterns on the scroll, but he still didn't discover anything. The Glazed God? One of the most powerful gods in the ancient era. There were many legends about him. I didn't expect this glazed scroll to be left behind by him. No wonder it's glazed. Yishi stroked the scroll with her small hand, leaving a touch of warmth on her palm. It didn't feel cold when it was in the air. Seeing Yin Nuoxing staring at the scroll in distress, Yishi couldn't help but shake her head. She stuffed the scroll into his hand and said indifferently, "Try all kinds of methods. Take turns to cultivate the 5 elements, collide with the spirit, and so on. What if I break it?" Hearing this simple and crude method, Yin Nuoxing's cheeks couldn't help but tremble. Could it really be so casual? Since it's left behind by God, it's definitely not simple. Brother Inua's pitiful amount of energy seems to be a little difficult to break the scroll left behind by him. Moreover, if it's broken so easily, it means that there's nothing left behind in this scroll. There's no inheritance, no treasure, nothing at all. Yishi smiled faintly, making Yin Nuoxing speechless. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly, but nodded without saying anything. He waved his right hand, and 5 colorful energy balls appeared around him. They circled around his body like fairies, causing the elemental energy in the surrounding space to become much denser. Light element. Seeing that bright white ball of energy the size of a brain, Yishi's eyes flashed with deep envy. Light element, this kind of heaven-defying element. As long as one was a person, they would want it. Taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoxing had a thought. The 5 dense, elemental energies leapt out like ferocious tigers and plunged into the glazed scroll. Afterwards, he stared closely at the scroll. Under the illumination of the 5 colored energies, he could only see the lines that twisted and turned like a maze. However, there were no changes. They didn't become fainter or deeper. After testing all the energies in his body and discovering that there was still no reaction, Yin Nuoxing finally lost his patience. He smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly, saying, "Little Shi, don't keep me in suspense. I can't handle this." Brother Nuo is really impatient. Yishi shook her head. Afterwards, her hands slowly flew up and down in front of her. Her hand seals slowly changed. Every time she paused, the space in front of her would tremble, and an extremely small formation, less than a finger wide, would fly out. Afterwards, she grabbed the formations and carefully placed them into the glazed scroll. Under Yishi's careful placement of the formations, the glazed scroll suddenly dimmed. However, the line started to glow faintly. The glazed light illuminated Yin Nuoxing and Yishi like candles. Their faces appeared extremely beautiful. Yin Nuoxing was confused by her actions, but he did not disturb her. He only watched silently as she moved the formations one by one. Yishi paid no attention to the confused Yin Nuoxing. The extremely small formations continuously appeared and were all placed into the glazed scroll. After nearly an hour, she finally filled the scroll with small formations. Afterwards, her hand seals suddenly changed. The intense light was as dazzling as the sun, causing Yin Nuoxing to hurriedly look away and close her eyes. It was difficult for Yin Nuoxing to open his tightly closed eyes. He could only feel that there was something on the scroll that was about to break through its shackles. Yishi could also feel it. Her hand seals changed once again. A vast and monstrous spiritual strength broke out of her body and poured into the glazed scroll. When the strong light faintly faded, Yin Nuoxing opened her eyes with great difficulty. She put down the palms that were covering her eyes and took a closer look. Then, she suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. Standing in front of her was an incomparably ancient towering tree. It seemed to reach all the way from the ground to the clouds. The glazed branches and leaves spread out, and through the sunlight, it was dyed a glaze color. As the light scattered on the ground, a strange energy slowly emerged, causing Yin Nuoxing to feel a little apprehensive. She hurriedly lowered her head. Only then did Yin Nuoxing discover that in addition to the huge, ancient tree, there was a strange lotus at the roots of the tree. Every leaf of the lotus showed a different color. Counting carefully, there were actually 30 to 40 colors. It was as if all the colors in the world had been condensed. The roots of the ancient tree penetrated into the interior of the lotus, and then broke out from the surface. The two seemed to be dependent on each other. The lotus tree, the mark of the glazed god. It seems that this is a scroll left behind by the glazed god. Moreover, no matter how you attack it, it is useless. There should be something good left in it. Mark? This is just a mark? Yin Nuoxing was speechless. This towering lotus tree was just a mark? Why did he feel a very clear breath of life? That breath of life flowed into his body, making him feel a little lightheaded. But what exactly is inside? Carefully taking the scroll from Yi Shi, Yin Nuoxing looked up and down. Then, she raised her head and asked in confusion, I don't know. Right now, we are not strong enough. I have seen the energy seal. It is very strong. Even a low-level god would find it difficult to break it. I reckon that it requires some special energy. Of course, if I were in my peak condition, I might be able to give it a try. Yi Shi shook her head. The energy seal was very strong. Her super-small magic array was not only used for detection, but also had some power to break the seal. However, it had no effect on it at all. As expected of a celestial god, even something left behind by a celestial god needs to be so cautious before it can be spread. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Knowing that it was difficult to break it, he was not disappointed. On the contrary, he was a little happy. He felt that it was not a loss to give away the 10,000 spirits killing array. Since even Yi Shi could not break it, the only scroll left behind by the glazed god must have something very powerful in it. Seeing Yin Nuoxing's fiery gaze, Yi Shi could not help but shake her head. Her small mouth opened slightly and paused for a moment, but nothing came out. With a bitter laugh, she muttered in her heart, Forget it, if I can snatch the purple night dark flame, I should be able to break this energy seal. I better not say anything. Little Shi, what about the 9 dragons array? Carefully putting away the scroll left behind by the glazed god, Yin Nuoxing's eyes sparkled. He looked at Yi Shi with hope. His look made the latter smile bitterly, but she did not say anything. She originally wanted to pass this thing to him, but the timing was not right. Cultivate the immortal grade magic array. Right now, when you have completely mastered it, I will teach you the divine grade magic array. At that time, I will pass the 9 dragons array to you. Yi Shi curled her lips and looked at Yin Nuoxing with smiling eyes. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing could not help but smile bitterly. Chapter 141. Early in the morning, the lazy sun struggled to leap from the horizon, shooting a ray of light parallel to the boundless prairie. There was some water mist left in the air, and even the light had turned into visible light. The sound of energy explosions rang out in the distance. Thick pillars of light tore through the mist, and the situation inside became clear. On the grassland, 2 figures flashed past. The whistling wind turned the emerald green into ripples and pushed them far away. In the void, pieces of blue discs about 10 feet in size were annihilated and formed again. Wherever the two passed, even the space could not help but tremble. Boom! Another violent explosion landed on the grassland, creating a huge crater in the ground. Dust flew everywhere, and a muffled groan could be heard. However, the 2 figures quickly rushed out of the dust, and the energy light pillars followed them into the sky. They exploded indiscriminately in the sky, as if they were blooming in a dazzling display of fireworks. Lightning, accompanied by a loud shout, a formation that was 1,000 feet in size rapidly condensed beside the figure in front. Soon after, it was grabbed by the figure. 6 wings carried a gust of wind as they pushed the formation into the distance. With a grab of the hand, a straight bolt of lightning seemed to forcefully draw a line in space. The glaring light caused the figure to hurriedly narrow his eyes. However, the person behind him did not seem to have seen it at all. He held a formation that was as wide as the linear thunder in his hand and pushed it out slightly, welcoming the lightning that tore through space like a furious dragon. The lightning dragon plunged into the formation, and the entire space fell silent for a moment. Afterwards, the 100 or so formations that hovered behind the person suddenly trembled gently. Bolts of lightning shot out from them, as if a thundercloud was releasing lightning randomly. Seeing that his attack had been directed at him instead, the face of the person at the front trembled a few times. He flapped his 6 wings and quickly waved his hands, creating a formation that was several hundred meters wide. The bolts of linear thunder that rushed over all suddenly changed directions and shot past him. Sizzle! Before the person could continue to fly away, the space in front of him suddenly shook gently. Afterwards, a wine-red color appeared in front of him. Along with it was a formation that stuck to Yun Nuoxing's face. He bitterly smiled and hurriedly waved his hands. This formation of yours is really against the rules. Little she, you're using my attack to hit me. Landing on the ground with a bitter smile, Yun Nuoxing crossed his legs. As he cultivated, he could not help but mutter. In the past few months, he had been vexed over this formation. Even the evil spirit eyes could not interfere with it, and it was also difficult to replicate it. According to his speculations, this was at least a demon tear formation. Brother Nuo, you're also really against the rules to cultivate. Yishi landed beside him and couldn't help but roll her eyes. When she saw that Yun Nuo could chat while cultivating one day, she couldn't remain calm anymore. She had never seen anyone who could talk while cultivating. Yun Nuoxing spread his hands. He was not sure about this. He only felt that when cultivating, one's mind would not be completely immersed, and there would be a part of it that was idle. Little she, what grade of divine tear formation master were you in the past? Yun Nuoxing could not help but ask as he cultivated. Yishi raised her head. Her small face was somewhat blank as she stared blankly at the sky. In a low voice, she said, I don't know. I've lived for too long and have forgotten many things. I've forgotten where I've been. I've forgotten my past cultivation experience. I've forgotten many people. I've forgotten where my home is. But I still remember that cultivation is the only thing that keeps me going in this life. Turning his head, Yun Nuoxing looked at her sad appearance. He opened his mouth and also raised his head. Looking at the blue sky, he could not help but sigh. He had also forgotten all of this. The only thing that kept him going was the voice in his head and Ouyang Xianin. He wanted to understand everything. Silence. The two of them fell silent at the same time. On the grass, only the sound of their breathing could be heard, as well as the slight sound of the wind blowing through their hair after a long time. The two of them walked out of this derived world. Yun Nuoxing changed his clothes. Just as he walked out of the secret room and arrived at the courtyard, he saw Yao Hua and the others sitting in the courtyard. They were in a sorry state, especially Fengya. Her aura was chaotic, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. She seemed to be seriously injured, and even her internal organs were injured. What happened to you all? Seeing their miserable appearance, Yu Exine jumped in fright. She quickly ran to Fengya's side. At this moment, the beautiful woman was frowning. Dense wood element was flowing out of her slender hands and into his body, calming down the berserk aura. We were beaten up. No, we were beaten up badly by one person. Jin Wang rolled his eyes. This was the second time Yao Hua and the others had been beaten up in Yuan City, and both times, one of them was seriously injured. The first time was Jining. This time, it was Fengya. Even with their carefree attitude, they were still a bit angry. Perhaps the other party did not kill them because they were from the 9 temples. However, from the looks of it, it would not be easy to beat them up either. One person? Yu Xin was stunned. The 9 of them were extremely talented and had the full support of the 9 temples. Other than being young and not having a higher cultivation than their peers, the 9 of them were confident that no one would be able to defeat them at the same level as them, someone in the half-immortal realm or the immortal realm. Thinking of this, Uxin came to a realization. If someone of this level did not use formations, even she would have trouble dealing with them. The chances of winning barehanded were not high. Yes, and that person is someone you have been looking forward to for a long time. Jin Wang nodded helplessly. He raised his golden eyes and looked at Uxin. He whispered, "Why don't you go and deal with that person? Someone I have been looking forward to for a long time?" Uxin was a bit confused. Now, the only people she had hope for were Morong Shuegu and Xueqing. However, the half-year period was not up yet, so it should not be time for them to go to the Juyuan Pavilion. Moreover, they had no enmity with Yao Hua and the others, so they would not be so ruthless. Moreover, Jin Wang did not know that she knew them. Someone from the Sacred Weapon Temple? Uxin was startled and quickly raised her head. Yes. The Gold Divine King nodded, a cold light flashing in his eyes. A few years ago, in Xingqiu City, the Divine Weapon Divine Palace was besieged by many forces, and the Divine Weapon Divine Palaces, 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 Divine Weapon Divine Palaces. Divine Weapon Divine Palaces, Divine Weapon Divine Palaces, Divine Weapon Divine Palaces, Divine Weapon Divine Palace. Uxin also thought of this matter, but she was also a little unhappy that the target of revenge was changed to Yao Hua and the others. Moreover, she was also involved in this matter. "All right, I will go and have a talk with that person." Uxin nodded. "Well, it can't be better if you can help. I originally wanted to leave him to Yao Hua and the others, but..." Jin Wang turned his head and looked at the injured Yao Hua and the others. He could not help but sigh. The latter and the others did not know whether to laugh or cry. Since they were beaten back, there was no need to talk about keeping them. The first floor of the Green Cloud restaurant was empty. In the middle of the restaurant, there was a huge, empty stone platform. Some plants were placed in a circle around the stone platform. The upper part of the middle part was also empty. Looking up, one could see many people sitting on the second floor of the restaurant, drinking tea and drinking wine beside the fence. Following the sandalwood stairs, the two walked up to the second floor of the restaurant. Because there were many people in Yuyan City, the restaurant was also full at the moment. However, what surprised Yuan was that although there were many people in the restaurant, it was very quiet. There was not the slightest bit of noise. Occasionally, the melodious sound of guqin could even be heard. The Green Cloud restaurant really lives up to its reputation. Yin Nuashing whispered. Although this clear sky restaurant was not luxurious, it was clean and tidy, and the decorations were very elegant. It made people's eyes light up, especially when paired with the quiet atmosphere of wine tasting and the setting off of the ancient songs. It made the restaurant even more elegant. After casually finding a seat by the window and ordering a pot of light tea, Yin Nuashing stretched himself. Sitting on the seat, he listened to the conversations of the people in the restaurant. As he spread out his soul strength, he could even hear the subtle sounds on the other side of the restaurant. However, his eyes were fixed on a place in the middle of the second floor. Yin Nuashing found that almost all the conversations in the restaurant revolved around the same topic, Purple Night Flame. Of course, most of the outsiders who came to Yuyan City at this moment were here for it. Occasionally, he would hear the names of the 9 immortal temples, the 8 ancient families, the Gathering Yuan Pavilion, and some other people. What surprised him the most was that the Battle of the Abyss Immortal Temple did not fade away even after a year had passed. What he did was gradually becoming a miracle. Brother Mu, last time, the young immortal kings of the 9 immortal temples came to find you, but they were beaten back by you. Why did you let them go instead of keeping them here? With your strength, you shouldn't even be afraid of that Son of Light, right? At this moment, A smiling voice attracted Yun Nuoxing's attention. He could not help but raise his head and slowly put down the teacup. Our sacred weapon Immortal Temple has been at odds with the 9 Immortal Temples for many years. However, they are too powerful. Before we came out, the elders said that if we meet the people of the 9 Immortal Temples, we just have to leave them alive. We juniors can only listen to them. However, I believe that after teaching them a lesson, they will know their place. A handsome man in a green robe said with a faint smile as he held a cup of tea in his slender hand. However, the so-called future 9 kings of the 9 Immortal Temples don't seem to be of high quality. They were crushed with a light slap. If the so-called future 9 kings are only SOSO, any 9 of them would be worthy of this title. The man in green robe laughed loudly. His eyes were filled with uncontrollable pride. In the distance, Yin Nuoxing heard these words and could not help but sigh. Yao Hua and the others were indeed weaker. They were at a disadvantage when they came out to train. It seems like this is the person that Fengya and the others were talking about. Opposite Yin Nuoxing, Yishi took a small sip of tea. Her wine-red eyes glanced at the man in green robe. Then, she looked at Yin Nuoxing and asked, "What do you plan to do? Since I promised the Immortal Kings, I have to move around. I heard that martial arts competitions are allowed in Qingyan Restaurant." Yin Nuoxing put down his spoon and raised his eyes to look at the huge stone platform below. Hee, Brother Mu's strength is indeed outstanding. You have already reached the 7th rank of the half-immortal realm. You must be a core disciple of the sacred weapon Immortal Temple. How can the people of the 9 Immortal Temples be compared to you, Brother Mu? Hearing the flattering voices around him, the smile on the man in green robe's face widened. Everyone liked to hear flattering words, especially in front of so many people. They would feel especially proud. Since the sacred weapon Immortal Temple is so powerful, what is there to be afraid of? Can't we just destroy the 9 Immortal Temples? At this moment, a mocking laughter suddenly sounded, startling everyone in the restaurant. Although the man in green robe's words were a bit unpleasant, his strength was there. He had defeated Yao Hua and the others twice in a row. Moreover, he was a disciple of the sacred weapon Immortal Temple. But now, someone dared to refute him. The man in green robe didn't expect that someone would contradict him like this. His face couldn't help but turn cold. He slowly turned his eyes and looked at Yin Nuoxing and Yishi. A cold light flashed in his eyes. He couldn't help but sneer and say, "Who the hell are you? Do you want to stand up for those trash? I'm not anyone. I'm just a passerby. I'm just saying something insignificant." Yin Nuoxing supported her face with her left hand. She didn't even look at the man. She slowly stirred her tea with a spoon and said indifferently, "A dignified half-immortal realm expert fighting against 9 people of the 10 extremes of the mortal realm. You still talk so righteously. You just came out of your mother's womb a few years earlier than them. In my opinion, you're just a trash." Everyone's face slightly changed when they saw Yun Nuoxing's lazy appearance, especially the people of Yuyan City. When they saw him and Yi Shi, their faces were a bit interesting. They sighed in their hearts. There are some words that you have to pay the price for saying it, because the person who said it doesn't have the qualifications to say it. The man in green robe's face gradually became gloomy. He coldly looked at Yin Nuoxing and sneered. Qingyan Restaurant, open the battle stage. Chapter 142. Their shouts reverberated in the pavilion and silenced the noisy atmosphere. Both of them were quite famous. One of them was a disciple of the Divine Weapon Divine Palace who had stood firmly in the half-celestial realm for a long time. He had defeated the young divine kings of the 9 divine temples twice. The other one had defeated a netherworld emperor expert and forced 4 netherworld kings to retreat. Although the divine weapon played a part in his victory, no one could deny his strength. Both of them were the most powerful among the younger generation. How could they compete with each other here today? As they thought of this, several people in the restaurant revealed an interested expression. Their gazes swept back and forth between the two of them. However, there were even more people who fixed their gazes on Yin Nuoxing. These people all knew that Ling Hong's sword was in this person's possession. 10 months ago, The young man who defeated an emperor of the underworld with the help of the divine sword, the Linghong sword, is here. He looks quite young. I didn't expect him to be recognized by the divine weapon. He is enviable. If it wasn't for the 9 divine temples behind him, he would have been taken away by others. The underworld emperor who came back from the dead is also beside him. I wonder what their relationship is. That day, he killed her with the Linghong sword. Now, they're sitting here in harmony. No wonder he provoked Mu Qing. He is under the protection of the 9 divine temples. The 9 young divine kings have been defeated twice. I guess he can't sit still and wants to prove himself. Hearing the whispers around, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but yawn. He tilted his head and looked at the calm teacup. He took a sip and couldn't help but smile at Yi Shi. I didn't have to shout, and he asked for a fight himself. How cooperative. Won't I cause you trouble by sitting here? Yi Shi sighed. She raised her head and looked at the people who still had some fear on their faces. She shook her head and poured a cup of tea for him. Yin Nuoxing shook his head. He had also heard those words, but he didn't want to pay attention to them. It doesn't matter. Didn't I say that you're no longer a member of the Abyss Shrine? You're Yi Shi. Your life is mine. Just listen to me and ignore them. Yi Shi nodded lightly. She didn't want to pay attention to anything in the first place. She was just worried that this would bring trouble to him, so she'd rather not appear. Since he didn't care, then so be it. So you're the brat who caused a commotion in Yuyin City. Hearing the surrounding voices, Mu Qing could not help but sneer. He looked at Yin Nuoxing with greed. Ling Hongjian was right in front of him. The sacred weapon Godly Palace attached great importance to high-level weapons. As long as they had their eyes on it, they would fight for it at all costs. He also coveted the second divine sword of the godly sword record. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and looked at Mu Qing. The greed in Mu Qing's eyes was the strongest, making him feel a little disgusted. His voice couldn't help but turn gloomy. You want Ling Hongjian? You? A mere half-immortal trash? A dignified trash? A clown? Do you believe that I can make you disappear completely from the world of the gods in the next instant? Mu Qing's loud curses stunned the surrounding people. Then, they saw Yin Nuoxing's cold eyes and trembled. They quickly looked away and hid the greed in their eyes. This guy could even kill an emperor of the underworld expert. How could his words be just for Mu Qing? I hope your strength is half as good as your mouth. Mu Qing sneered. Mu Qing sneered. His figure flashed and instantly appeared on the stone platform on the first floor. He looked at Yin Nuoxing with a smile. He was a rank 7 half-immortal, while Yin Nuoxing was only a rank 9 mortal realm expert. The difference in strength was obvious. Although he had a divine weapon, it was impossible for him to use his divine weapon in this kind of competition. Therefore, he had never lost to a rank 9 mortal realm expert before. I have heard of your achievements for a long time. I wonder if you can announce your name today, so that we can admire you? Finish it in 10 moves. Brother Nuo will have to carve an extra 1,000 Dharma arrays in one more move. Yi Shi swayed her legs and smiled sweetly. Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The surrounding people were shocked. She was so confident. Could it be that she could win? Since little brother Mu wants to admire me, I naturally can't refuse. If I don't meet little Shi's requirements, I don't mind telling you. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at the green-clothed man on the stage with a feminine smile. Mu Qing raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw that Yin Nuoxing didn't refuse. However, the smile on his face became wider and wider. He made a gesture of invitation. However, no one saw the cold look in his eyes when he lowered his head slightly. Yin Nuoxing stretched his waist and tapped his feet on the ground. The space in front of him shook. In the next instant, his figure appeared not far away from Mu Qing. You are indeed worthy of being the wielder of the Linghong sword. Your courage is really admirable. Mu Qing smiled as he looked at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing looked at Mu Qing's fake smile with disdain. His face was calm, and his voice was so calm that there wasn't the slightest trace of emotion. I don't need the Linghong sword to deal with you. Please. I'm afraid that you won't be able to return once you come down. Mu Qing laughed loudly. He suddenly took a step forward. The vast yuan power and immortal energy in his body immediately surged out in all directions. The powerful immortal energy pressure caused many people in the pavilion to take a few more glances. This aura and Yuan power were almost completely transformed into immortal energy. Today, I want to personally test just how great the wielder of the Ling Hong sword is. Mu Qing laughed loudly as his energy surged. He suddenly clenched his slender hand, and a sharp wind formed in his palm. He stomped his feet on the ground, and his body appeared in front of Yun Nuoxing at lightning speed. The sharp wind from his palm was like an inescapable net that violently slammed toward Yun Nuoxing. The force caused Yun Nuoxing's robes to flutter. Yun Nuoxing took a step forward in the face of Mu Qing's ferocious attack. A formation was suddenly shattered the moment it was formed. In a blur, he appeared behind Mu Qing. Good dodge. However, you should also try my flaming weapon footwork. Mu Qing was startled when he felt Yun Nuoxing appear behind him. He immediately sneered and took a step forward. Flames flickered on the ground, and his body was like a ghost. It seemed as though there was a ball of fire under his feet. There was no lack of high-level secret techniques in the sacred weapon Divine Palace. Mu Qing's position in the Divine Palace was not low. Naturally, the techniques that he learned were not ordinary. Icy explosive flame palm. After performing the so-called flaming weapon footwork, Mu Qing's speed suddenly increased. The wind from his palm also changed abruptly. There was some cold air entwined in the scorching heat and rapidly gathered in his palm. Wherever his palm passed, the space was distorted by the high temperature. An ear-piercing buzzing sound spread out sharply. The resources in the Divine Palace are really enviable. If I did not have Xian Yin behind me. Yun Nuoxing narrowed his eyes when he felt Mu Qing's speed and attack suddenly become fierce. With so many high-level secret techniques, this guy did not have to worry about not being able to deal with a 7th-rank half-immortal. He did not need to use too much strength to deal with him. However, his opponent had miscalculated. Yun Nuoxing, who had extraordinary soul power and mental energy, could perfectly dodge any attack. Duh. Yun Nuoxing's slender fingers flicked continuously. Small formations were formed and shattered in an instant. Every attack would accurately hit the moment when Mu Qing's palm wind was about to hit him. At this moment, the palm wind would weaken. He had the evil spirit eye and could grasp this moment very well. Bang! Bang! Every time the two energies clashed, the expression on Mu Qing's face would become more and more solemn. After 7 or 8 rounds of fighting, his face had been completely replaced by a solemn expression. He had already used 2 high-level immortal rank secret skills, but he was unable to cause the slightest bit of damage to Yun Nuoxing. The latter's frequent yawns made him feel a little embarrassed. Yawn 8 rounds. There are still 2 rounds left. Xiaoxi will blame me for being playful. Why don't we settle this once and for all? After a long yawn, Yun Nuoxing twisted his body and directly dodged Mu Qing's tricky attack. He did not even want to break it. Bastard! Mu Qing's expression was dark and cold. His feet suddenly retreated. While his body was retreating, his hands formed numerous seals with lightning-like speed. The surrounding fire elements also crazily gathered towards him. Blazing blood seal. A huge seal came crashing down from the sky with a wave of fire. Yun Nuoxing narrowed his eyes. He took a step forward, and 2 magic arrays appeared in a flash. They ignored the huge seal and strangely appeared in front of Mu Qing. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched toward the latter. For small scarlet talismans flew towards Mu Qing like a fierce gale. Mu Qing, who was unable to react, was scared half to death. This brat teleportation? Yun Nuoxing's strange figure caused his face to turn pale. However, before he had time to think, a terrifying gale rushed towards him, causing him to hastily meet it. Bang! The terrifying gale carried a blazing heat wave as it spread out on the stone platform. Soon after, the crowd seemed to hear several consecutive sounds of attacks. A terrifying explosive force surged out from Yun Nuoxing's fist. Mu Qing was directly hit onto the stone platform, creating a sizable hole. Upstairs, the faces of the people who were originally watching the show changed. Could it be that a dignified half-immortal was so weak that he couldn't even defeat a mundane stage brat? Mu Qing is actually not his opponent. An uproar broke out in the surroundings. Looking at Yun Nuoxing, who had used all his skills but was still yawning as if he had not woken up yet, everyone could not help but feel speechless. This fellow, fighting was still so boring. Bastard. After being punched into the stone platform, Mu Qing's face turned red. He suddenly jumped up from the stone platform, leaving a human-shaped hole behind him. He didn't understand why he, a 7th-rank half-immortal, wasn't the opponent of a mundane stage brat. Demonic flame seal. A sinister expression appeared on Mu Qing's face. He used the flaming weapon step technique to the extreme. Flames flickered on the stone platform, and the seals in his hands changed rapidly. A majestic amount of energy was rapidly condensing. Achoo! Yun Nuoxing fiercely sneezed. He rubbed his nose and lazily looked at the blurry figure that was rapidly shuttling through the arena. He lightly stepped on the ground. Go to hell. Seeing Yun Nuoxing's appearance, the sinister expression on Mu Qing's face became even more pronounced. His hand seals paused, and a cold expression appeared in his eyes. He formed a flaming seal in his hand. However, just as he was about to attack Yun Nuoxing, a chilling intent enveloped his heart. Boom! The moment the chilling intent appeared, the stone platform under Mu Qing's feet suddenly exploded. A blue pillar of fire that was over 10 feet tall rushed out like a ferocious beast baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. In the end, it swallowed Mu Qing whole. The attack that came from below the stone platform was beyond everyone's expectations. As one of the main characters, Mu Qing could not even let out a scream. His body was twisted in the blue pillar of fire, and his clothes were burned to ashes. However, the pillar of fire only lasted for 3 seconds before it gradually disappeared. The blue flames on Mu Qing's body also suddenly extinguished. His body turned into a piece of charcoal, and he powerlessly fell onto the stone platform. Looking at the battle that had ended in an instant, the restaurant was completely silent. Numerous astonished gazes looked at the arena, the handsome young man who was still yawning. After a while, thunderous applause resounded in the restaurant. He was indeed worthy of being chosen by Ling Hongjian. Yun Nuoxing's expression was calm. Looking at the charred Mu Qing, he slightly cupped his hands and yawned for the last time. Then, he smiled and said, I didn't wake up this time. I'm sorry. Thank you for going easy on me. Pucci, the charred figure, who had just raised his head, could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood when he heard these words. The surrounding people also smiled bitterly. What would happen if he woke up? Chapter 143. Yun Nuoxing lightly tapped the ground and returned to the second floor to sit down. There was a barely noticeable flame burning between his fingers as his spiritual strength faintly gushed out. He raised his teacup, took a sip, and let out a sigh of relief. Aloft, in the pavilion, the few people who were seated beside Mu Qing earlier were startled as they stared at the charcoal within the pile of rocks. They exchanged glances and saw a shock that was difficult to hide in each other's eyes. They involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva. They didn't recognize Yun Nuoxing at first glance. Later, when they heard the discussions around them, they knew that Mu Qing's opponent was the miracle who had caused a stir in Yuyan City. Their understanding of the former was limited to this. They thought that he only had a divine sword and didn't have any strength. Now that they thought about it, that idea was too ridiculous. How weak could someone who was chosen by Ling Hongjian be? Cough. On the stone platform, Mu Qing, who was buried in the rubble, turned over in a rather sorry state. He struggled to climb out. His clothes had long been burned, and his pants were about to fall off. His entire body was char-black. As he coughed violently, blood continuously flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Mu Qing's hair was disheveled. His blood-red eyes stared ferociously at Yun Nuoxing, who was slowly drinking tea. His long hair fluttered in the wind, making him look like a crazy demon. In this competition, He was almost completely defeated. He was defeated in 2 moves by a mortal stage expert. No matter how hard he racked his brains, he still couldn't figure out what had happened. He had many high-level secret skills, but he was defeated so miserably. Bastard, I don't accept this. Anger and humiliation exploded in his heart like a bomb. He had been defeated so miserably in front of so many people. If this matter was spread to the Sacred Weapon Divine Palace, he didn't know how much ridicule he would receive. He wasn't a core disciple. At most, he was a slightly talented one. If he didn't perform well, it wasn't impossible for him to be expelled. Mu Qing's anger rushed to his head. He roared angrily and stomped his feet on the ground. Enduring the tearing pain in his body, he turned into a flash of lightning and once again shot toward Yin Nuoxing on the 2nd floor. Seeing Mu Qing suddenly lose his mind, many people in the restaurant frowned. This guy didn't have any elegance at all. How ugly. Yin Nuoxing shook her head as she indifferently looked at Mu Qing's face. She took a sip of tea and, with a thought, a formation that was 100 feet in size appeared out of thin air. Enormous energy endlessly squeezed towards the center of the formation like a tide. Subsequently, a terrifying energy pillar blasted Mu Qing's chest with lightning speed. Poochie. Suffering another heavy blow, Mu Qing felt as if her entire body was being torn apart. She spat out another mouthful of blood and was sent flying into the air. She crashed through the floorboards of the 3rd floor and crashed into some unknown corner. TSK, this Mu Qing is so simple-minded. Of all the people to provoke, she chose to provoke Nuoxing. Isn't she looking for trouble? While Mu Qing pounced toward Yin Nuoxing like a madman, Morong Shuege couldn't help but laugh from the 3rd floor of the loft. She had been watching for a long time. This was a somewhat remote place and was much quieter than other places. There were 4 figures sitting at this table, 2 men and 2 women. 2 of them were Morong Shuege and Xueqing. The other 2 were also exceptionally good-looking. At a glance, it seemed like the entire table was made up of girls. Not bad. She's a good seedling. Mortal level 9. Her energy is as condensed as a crystal, and her capacity is more than 10 times that of solid. Mu Qing's energy is only at the semi-solid level. Moreover, that blue flame is probably a stronger beast fire. It's normal for Mu Qing to lose. The good-looking man raised his willowy eyebrows and said faintly, "A powerful soul and an array master. That array, just now, is probably at the immortal level. In other words, young Master Yin has already stepped into the ranks of masters. As for Mu Qing, I don't know what to say." Xueqing couldn't help but laugh. As soon as they finished speaking, the 3 of them turned their gazes to the woman who had been quiet all this while. She wore a light yellow dress, and her cheeks were covered by a veil. Even so, one could vaguely see a very beautiful silhouette through the veil. Her bright eyes seemed to condense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. She had an indescribable aura of holiness. Sitting beside Xueqing, her aura was particularly eye-catching. She didn't respond to the topic of the 3 of them. It was as if nothing could pique her interest. "Cousin, you should say something too." Morong Shuege couldn't help but roll her eyes and laugh when she saw her cousin's reaction. The woman in the light yellow dress glanced at her and lowered her eyelids slightly. She didn't say anything, causing the 3 of them to roll their eyes as well. In the pavilion, Mu Qing, who was covered in blood, looked at Yin Nuoxing with a ferocious gaze. His breathing was like a cow's panting. After a long while, he roared like a madman and charged out again. However, before he could reach Yin Nuoxing this time, dozens of chains bound him like a dumpling. The cold sensation brought him back to his senses. "Enough. This is so annoying." Yin Nuoxing frowned and stomped her foot on the ground. Dozens of arrays suddenly appeared in the void in front of her and surrounded Mu Qing in layers. The energy connected into one, and the ripples caused the space to tremble. Everyone in the restaurant sucked in a breath of cold air. How much soul power did it take to control so many immortal-level arrays at once? However, they didn't know that under Yishi's daily training, Yun Nuoxing's maximum number of arrays was dozens of times more than here. Wow, this restaurant is going to explode. Murong Shui jumped up in shock when she saw the dozens of arrays. She quickly grabbed the arms of the woman in the light yellow dress and Shueqing. Just as she was about to rush out, a shout suddenly resounded in the restaurant. Mu Qing. The sudden cold shout woke Mu Qing up completely. His body was suspended in the air, and he clenched his teeth so hard that they were about to break. You've disgraced the sacred weapon, Godly Palace. Mu Qing turned around with difficulty. Several figures walked in from outside the restaurant and stood outside the stone platform. They raised their heads and looked at Mu Qing, who was tied up like a dumpling. They couldn't help but frown. When Mu Qing saw the leading figure, fear flashed in his eyes. Duan Qinghai. Murong Shui stopped when she saw that person. She looked at them with interest. It seemed that today's matter wasn't over yet. Humph. The figure glanced at Mu Qing and snorted coldly. Then, he slowly turned around and stared at the black-robed figure on the second floor. He said in a deep voice, "Nameless boy, did you have fun beating him up?" "Yes, quite fun. I'm just a little sleepy." Yun Nuoxing yawned and looked down at the figure. The latter was wearing a gray robe with a large weapon word printed on his back. It was very eye-catching. Silver light flowed on the robe. It was obviously not made of ordinary materials. There was a burning sensation in the aura flowing around the robe. Immortal rank. He's at least at the 6th transformation. He hasn't reached the 1st transformation yet. His soul power flowed out slowly and casually. Judging from the energy that had completely condensed into immortal qi, this person should be at the 6th transformation immortal rank. Yun Nuoxing wasn't afraid of him. Hearing this, the man in the gray robe looked up and took a step forward. He appeared on the stone platform and said indifferently, "Sacred weapon, Godly Palace, Duan Qinghai. Since you like to fight so much, let me fight with you. What do you think? Taking turns to fight? Interesting, but it's useless. If you want to fight, take my attack first." Yun Nuoxing smiled faintly, and then he suddenly snapped his fingers with his right hand. After that, the dozens of immortal grade formations in midair suddenly turned and pointed towards Duan Qinghai. The energy that overflowed from them caused the gazes of everyone in the restaurant to narrow slightly. Dozens of energy light pillars formed a curtain that covered the sky as they smashed towards Duan Qinghai from all directions. The hot, cold, and extremely fast energy wind blew against his face, causing his expression to freeze. He stretched his hands forward, and an energy barrier quickly formed. Bang! Crack! The energy beam that blotted out the sky and covered the earth tore through his barrier without much effort. The surging immortal qi was scattered. Then, it all landed on Duan Qinghai's body. Sounds of energy explosions came from all over his body. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He was suddenly sent flying, leaving a bloody line in the air. It was very shocking. "Sorry, you can't take it." Yun Nuoxing sighed with a regretful expression. He slowly sat down and took a sip of tea. A majestic soul power rushed into Duan Qinghai's mind. Huffed. Hearing this sound and the sharp pain in his mind, Duan Qinghai's eyes rolled back. He spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted. In fact, he had underestimated his opponent. He didn't expect that immortal rank Yun Nuoxing's concentrated attacks could directly tear his defense apart. Mu Qing and the others who came in with Duan Qinghai looked at each other. Murong Shui and the others couldn't help but wipe the sweat on their foreheads. This Yun Nuoxing was too strong. She killed an immortal rank expert in an instant. He didn't use his full strength. At this time, the woman in the yellow dress finally spoke. Her faint voice made the others turn their gazes. Shueqing and Mu Qing didn't think much of it. They more or less knew how strong Yun Nuoxing was. However, the other man looked at Murong Shui in disbelief. "Cousin, it's useless to stare at me. Yun Nuoxing can tear down Yuyan City if she uses her full strength." Seeing his bull-like eyes, Murong Shui couldn't help but smile bitterly. The other man also smiled bitterly. Was this really something that a mortal rank expert could do? She was a monster. Bastard, what are you doing? The sound of footsteps was once again transmitted from the entrance of the restaurant. Shortly after, a gray-robed old man rushed into the restaurant with a majestic gait. His figure flashed and appeared on the stone platform. He couldn't help but frown when he saw that Mu Qing was suspended in midair and Duan Qinghai was lying at the side. Elder Feng Yan, seeing the gray-robed old man, Mu Qing and the others were startled. They hurriedly cupped their fists and greeted him respectfully. How dare you be so presumptuous? Do you think there's no one in the sacred weapon godly palace? The old man called Feng Yin glared at Mu Qing and the others. Then he glared at Yin Nuoxing. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. His aura surged in the air. At this moment, the atmosphere in the restaurant was extremely oppressive. Everyone hurriedly retreated when they saw the divine rank expert who suddenly broke in. Many people found it difficult to breathe under this aura. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Even the restaurant was on the verge of collapse. A divine king expert, Yin Nuoxing, frowned slightly. He took a deep breath, and a golden array appeared under his feet. He turned around and saw Yishi covering her mouth and yawning. Then she smiled at him. The golden array gently rotated, and a strange aura flowed around his body. Yin Nuoxing only felt that the pressure of the God-King powerhouse had completely dissipated. Although he himself did not feel much pressure, he had so many divine artifacts with him. Even a God underworld powerhouse could not crush him, let alone a God-King powerhouse. Old man, don't tell me you want to do it yourself. Yin Nuoxing slowly exhaled. Dots of blue light gathered in his sleeves. He looked at Feng Yin, who was on the stone platform below, and said softly. Feng Yin looked at Mu Qing and Duan Qinghai. A cold aura gushed out from his body. The murderous aura pressed down on Yin Nuoxing. The fluctuation of his divine origin caused the space to distort slightly. Old man, don't be too arrogant. Yin Nuoxing gritted his teeth. He clenched his fist in the air. Then, the dozens of arrays flashed back. They duplicated at a dazzling speed. In just a few breaths' time, there were thousands of arrays rotating behind Yin Nuoxing. The azure light shone on everyone's stunned faces. Chapter 144. The thousands of discs were like the branches and leaves of a towering tree, spreading out into the distance. When they fully stretched out, they were at least 10,000 feet in size. They penetrated the green cloud restaurant and covered the entire void. Whether it was inside the pavilion or outside the restaurant, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air when they saw this blue curtain. Well, this is not good. Murong Shuigu and the others looked up at the slowly rotating arrays. Their mouths and tongues were dry. How much soul power did it take to control so many arrays? Moreover, there was not a trace of disorder. How precise and terrifying was the control of the soul power. I think it's better for us to leave first. The handsome man smiled embarrassedly. If these things were to fall, not to mention the green cloud restaurant, even the surrounding 10,000 feet would be wiped out. Let's go behind young Master Yin. It's safer there. Hearing this, Xueqing shook her head. If one looked carefully, they would find that the spirit arrays were all standing behind Yin Nuoxing and were uniformly pointing at Feng Yin on the stone platform. Then, the latter's back was a safe place for them. The woman in the yellow dress still did not say anything. She stood up calmly and walked down the stairs. The three people behind her looked at each other and rolled their eyes. Would this guy lose a piece of meat if he spoke more? I didn't expect you to be a spirit array master. Looking at this posture, it should be at the 5th grade of the immortal rank. Seeing the numerous spirit arrays, Feng Yan's eyes flashed with surprise. However, this surprise only lasted for a short moment before coldness filled his eyes again. 5th grade of the immortal rank? In the pavilion, those who knew about magic arrays couldn't help but sneer in their hearts. These magic arrays were indeed around the 5th grade of the immortal standard, but how could the spiritual force that controlled the orderly operation of the 1,000 pieces be only at the 5th grade? They were afraid that they could compete with people at the 7th or 8th grade. They didn't know how this kid practiced. Yin Nuashing didn't know what these people were thinking. Because of the soul-burning art, his soul strength was being consumed almost all the time. This also made his soul strength extremely powerful. However, he didn't know how to use it in the beginning. It wasn't until Ishi gave him guidance on cultivation that he began to pay attention to these ethereal things. At this moment, all of Yin Nuashing's soul power and spiritual energy were pouring into the array. His elemental energy flowed out from every inch of his body. When the 3 types of energy flowed into the array, he could clearly feel his body gradually becoming tired. Yin Nuashing knew that this was a sign that he had reached his limit. If he were to weave another array now, that array would be the last straw that broke the camel's back. He could clearly feel the feedback of every single array in his mind. Through the evil spirit eye, he accurately controlled every single array. With a single thought, the hundreds and thousands of arrays, under the horrified gazes of the crowd, abruptly turned and aimed at the gray-robed old man standing on the stone platform. Shortly after, their revolutions quietly sped up. Countless amounts of energy poured into them as if they were free. Specks of colorful light quietly appeared in the center of the arrays. What a terrifying energy! Invisible ripples streaked across the space. The energy ripples formed by the thousands of arrays made everyone feel a little apprehensive. Even some of the immortal rank experts and demonic rank experts felt their hearts throbbing. If the energy contained in the blue sky casually smashed down, the Azure Cloud restaurant would definitely suffer heavy casualties. It's just a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Feng Yin also felt the unusually large amount of energy. However, he only gave a faint sneer as he stood with his hands behind his back. His robes fluttered even though there was no wind, appearing to be a bold person. It was as though he did not care about the existence of those frightening arrays. As his divine essence circulated, a great pressure descended from the sky. The space around his body also started to tremble slightly. Let this old man teach a brat like you who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In the face of absolute power, all of this is useless. Feng Yin slowly raised his palm and aimed it at Yin Nuashing. At the place where his palm was aimed, Yin Nuashing seemed to have an illusion. He felt that the space he was pointing at was sealed by his hand, and even the air didn't exist. Fiercely biting the tip of his tongue to wake himself up, Yin Nuashing suddenly raised his head. His gorgeous eyes stared unwaveringly at Feng Yin below. Both of his hands formed a hand seal. However, just as he was about to let all the formations attack together, a soft shout suddenly rang out. Wait! The sudden voice caused the tense people in the pavilion to be stunned. At this moment, there was still someone who interfered. Oh, don't misunderstand. We just want to say a few words before you guys start fighting. As everyone's eyes flickered, 4 figures slowly walked down for the 3rd floor and came before Yin Nuashing. Their gentle voices made Yin Nuashing's eyes flash with astonishment. Didn't you guys go into seclusion? Yin Nuashing, who was desperately supporting the arrays, was also stunned when he saw the people who had come. Soon after, the seals in his hands slowly dissipated. The arrays also suddenly stopped operating and were fixed in place. This caused many people to heave a sigh of relief. Oh, Uncle and the others have given us some instructions. We have to do it. Murong Shuege glanced at Yin Nuashing and Feng Yin, smiled embarrassedly, and waved his hand. Soon after, his eyes turned to Feng Yin on the stone platform. He cupped his hands and said with a fake smile, Murong Shuege greets Elder Feng Yin on behalf of the Murong family. On the stone platform, Feng Yin raised his head and looked at Murong Shuege and the other 3. He couldn't help but frown. The Murong family? The Murong family from the Divine Land? Moreover, when he saw that Murong Shuege and the others seemed to be familiar with Yin Nuashing, his frown deepened. The pressure that spread out gradually withdrew. With the people from the Murong family here, it seemed that he couldn't make a move today. The Murong family is very courteous. Nephew Shuege, please send my greetings to Brother Ling Feng. Feng Yin nodded slightly and said softly. Murong Shuegu replied with a fake smile. Soon after, she looked at Yun Nuoxing and cupped her hands. She even winked at him and said loudly, The Murong family sends our greetings to the 9 Shrine. Brother Yun, please pass a message to the Divine Kings. Tell them that their old friends are here. Hearing this, Feng Yan's expression froze. Many people in the pavilion were also stunned. They all looked at Yun Nuoxing strangely. This guy was also from the 9 Shrine? However, those who were in Yuyin City that night weren't too surprised by this because they had already seen Yun Nuoxing standing together with Jin Wang and the others from the 9 Shrine. However, they were still a little surprised. They didn't expect that the Murong family would send Yun Nuoxing to pass the message. What are you doing? Yun Nuoxing asked through a communication technique with a bitter smile. On the surface, he clasped his hands and nodded indifferently. He didn't understand what Murong Shuego was trying to do. Literally, Uncle and the others want us to go to Yuyin City one by one to clear a path for them and scout out the situation in Yuyin City, just in case they come here like headless flies. But once we're done, we'll be free. We could do whatever we want, Murong Shuego replied through a communication technique with a smile. Yun Nuoxing nodded. He understood. However, he looked at Xueqing strangely. Since the 4 of them were standing together, was Xueqing also a part of the Murong family? As if she saw through his doubts, Xueqing smiled sweetly. She was as enchanting as a blooming peony, shattering the tense atmosphere in the pavilion immediately. It felt like the snow had melted and spring had arrived. Young Master Yun, my name is Murong Xueqing. No one outside knows this name. Young Master, you have to keep it a secret for me. Xueqing directly grabbed Yun Nuoxing's hand and held it gently. Xueqing and Mei Mao smiled, winked, and transmitted through a communication technique. She's your sister? Yun Nuoxing lowered his head and glared at Murong Shuego. He transmitted through a communication technique with some displeasure. Fairy Xue didn't let me say it at first. Brother Yun, you can't blame me. Murong Shuego grinned. His smile was as beautiful as a woman's. Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but want to slap him. Murong Shuego scratched his head and pointed to the 2 people behind him. He smiled and said, This is my cousin, Murong Yufeng, and this is my cousin, Murong Yujing. Then he turned his head and looked at the 2 people. He said, This is Yun Nuoxing. We met him in Zhuyuan Manor. He's a very interesting and powerful guy. Yun Nuoxing rolled his eyes. What the hell is with calling someone interesting in front of others? He looked at Murong Yufeng and Murong Yujing and chuckled. His evil spirit I involuntarily revolved. 9th revolution, 9th revolution, 8th revolution. You're all much stronger than me. Nice to meet you. They rolled their eyes. Stronger than you? They clearly saw Duan Qinghai's end. Although he was only a 7th revolution half-immortal, he wasn't much weaker than them. He was killed in an instant. If they were in his place, they probably wouldn't have fared much better. Murong Yufeng shook his head and grinned. Looking at his handsome smile, Yun Nuoxing's cheeks couldn't help but twitch. Taking a closer look, this guy was somewhat similar to Shuege. His silhouette also had that enchanting temperament. Murong Yujing only nodded and didn't say anything. However, Yun Nuoxing couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. She then looked at Xueqing. Both of them had a kind of holy aura that ordinary people didn't have. They were both very beautiful women. Seeing them chatting happily and ignoring him, Feng Yan's brows twitched a few times. He took a deep breath and gradually restrained the cold, killing intent in his eyes. He knew that he had no chance to kill Yun Nuoxing today, not to mention the Murong family. Just the fact that the latter was a member of the 9 Elemental Temple was enough to make him wary. The 9 Elemental Temple's name shook the entire divine world. They were almost a household name. If he met one of them, there would be a few more who would jump out. It was best to describe them as inseparable. Although the sacred artifact temple was strong, they didn't have the guts or ability to face 9 existences of the same level. Since you all have something to do, this old man won't delay you. Feng Yin sighed and turned his eyes to Yun Nuoxing. His body stiffened, but he still nodded reluctantly and said lightly, Since ancient times, heroes have emerged from the young. The people of the Nine Elemental Temple are indeed outstanding. Our sacred artifact temple is ashamed of our inferiority. Farewell." After saying that, he waved his sleeve and pulled Mu Qing out of the chain. Then he picked up Duan Qinghai and led the others out of the Green Cloud restaurant in a hurry. He looked a little dejected, which made the others feel strange. Fisk nothing. Seeing Feng Yin and the others leaving quickly, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but roll her eyes. A wisp of soul force floated in from outside and went into her glabella. Then she turned her eyes and saw Murong Shuegu and the others looking at her in confusion. She smiled and said, "I left a wisp of soul force in Duan Qinghai's head to look for the array of the sacred artifact temple, but I didn't find it." After saying that, she smiled bitterly, which made the others smile bitterly as well. It was too easy to find someone's memory with just a wisp of soul force. Chapter 145. The Murong clan was similar to many famous first-rate forces in the realm of the gods. They were all located in the center of the realm of the gods, which was the center of the realm of the gods. The 9 divine temples and the 8 ancient families, which were known to all, towered above the clouds and looked down on all living things, had also set up their headquarters in the incomparably vast territory. Currently, there were also many first-rate forces that had barged into Yuyan City in order to compete for the most violent and destructive divine flame that was born in the world, the Purple Night Flame. Among the many forces, the Murong clan was just an inconspicuous team. It was difficult to find them in Yuyan City, which was filled with millions of people. Our uncle is an expert at the pinnacle of the divine underworld realm. I'm afraid that many gods will come out for the fight for the Purple Night Dark Flame this time. Uncle said that conservatively speaking, the strongest among the people who will come will not surpass the Netherworld King expert. Xueqing has been visiting Yuyan City frequently since a few years ago to monitor the Purple Night Dark Flame. Along the way to the manor in the east of Yuyan City, Yin Nuoxing kept asking about the information that Xuega and the others had collected. When she heard that there would be Underworld King experts, she looked worried. She lowered her head to look at Yi Shi, who was looking around in her arms and couldn't help but sigh. Wasn't she the peak divine underworld expert who was attacking? "Young Master Yin, you gave me a fright when you went to the Yuyan Pavilion that night. I often go there to see the blood sacrifice array. In the past 3 years, I haven't seen any changes to it, but the ominous light makes me feel uncomfortable. Every time I come out of the Yuyan Pavilion, I feel that my mind is damaged, but I can't find any signs of it." Xueqing shook her head and sighed. "Damaged mind?" Yin Nuoxing paused and turned around to look at her. She asked in surprise. Mind power was produced by the brain. If it was damaged, it would be easy to feel dizzy. If it was damaged, it would cause amnesia or even madness. It was a special ability to control the body's functions. Mind power would only increase slightly with the increase of one's strength. Of course, this excluded those who were array masters or alchemists and other professions that require mind power. "Yes, but it's nothing serious." Xueqing nodded. It was just that she felt a little dizzy when she came out, but it was not a big problem. If it was, she would not go to the Serene Flame Pavilion again. Seeing that she didn't seem to be trying to be brave, Yin Nuoxing nodded and asked, "Have you found any major forces worth paying attention to? Which one is the most threatening?" "Brother Yin, it's not good to steal information so openly, right?" Shuega laughed and slapped him, causing Yin Nuoxing to roll his eyes. He knew that it was inappropriate to ask such a question, but he was also determined to obtain the Purple Night Dark Flame and needed to understand it. Shuega didn't care much about it. She said, "Now in Yuyan City, the confirmed first-rate forces of the Divine Prefecture are 9 Deities Palace, our sect, Ice and Snow Villa, Soul Lotus Sect, and Black Flame Sect. If we include the people from the other regions, the Saint Weapon Divine Hall and the Constellation Pavilion seem to have sent people as well. However, I am not sure about the people from the other 12-star palaces. There are also the people from the 8 ancient clans. All of them keep a very low profile. They are unlike the 9 divine hall. To put it nicely, they are open and above board. However, their whereabouts are too obvious. This will cause others to take precautions against them. Of course, the one we need to pay attention to the most is not 9 deities' palace or the 8 ancient families, but the biggest force that has taken root in Yuyin City, the Serene Flame Pavilion. Xueqing waved her hand and said, "But it's very strange. I've been here for 3 years, and I haven't seen anyone from the Serene Flame Pavilion. Other than the disciples on the floating platform and the soldiers on the city wall, I haven't seen anyone else from the Serene Flame Pavilion." Hearing her mention the Serene Flame Pavilion, Yin Nuoxing was startled, and his expression became somewhat unnatural. He thought back to that night when he stood outside the Serene Flame Pavilion's palace. Inside the spirit formation world, the Serene Flame Pavilion and Yuyin City seemed to have some sort of special connection. However, his evil spirit, I was unable to see what was so special about it. Let's go to the Serene Flame Pavilion again tonight. I want to clarify some things. Yin Nuoxing turned his head and said to the 4. Xueqing and Murong Qingfeng were startled for a moment. After a while, they reacted and nodded. They also knew how much Yin Nuoxing was obsessed with the purple night flame. However, Murong Yufeng and Murong Qingfeng were somewhat surprised. They indifferently glanced at Yin Nuoxing and then looked at each other. They had only met Yin Nuoxing today and did not know what he was doing. Hey, have you heard? Recently, there have been many disappearances in Yuyin City. Right now, a lot of people are talking about it. It's just disappearances. What's there to talk about? Right now, there's so many forces from all over the divine realm gathered in Yuyin City. It's nothing more than enmity meeting, assassination, murder, and kidnapping. If someone disappears, then so be it. Who would care about it? Tisk, there's something you don't know. Disappearances are indeed not a big deal, but what if even a god-level expert disappears? Yin Nuoxing and the others were startled when they heard a topic on the street. They turned their gazes and saw 2 people walking aimlessly on the street. They could not help but stop in their tracks. The few of them looked at each other and stood at the side of a stall, pretending to be looking at something. Furthermore, they all pricked up their ears. God-level expert? Don't joke around. How could an expert of that level go missing? He should have left. It happened a few days ago. A large force came from the Divine Prefecture. I think it's called the Ice and Snow Mountain Villa. It said that a God King expert came to their place. However, a few nights ago, according to the eyewitness, he saw the expert from the Ice and Snow Mountain Villa walking in front of him. As he walked, he suddenly disappeared. There were no energy fluctuations in the surroundings. There was no movement at all. Don't you think it's strange? Xueqing's heart thumped. She raised her head and looked at that person. Her pretty face was somewhat pale. She seemed to have thought of something. Yin Nuoxing, who was standing beside her, hurriedly touched Xueqing with her palm. He just disappeared. Perhaps that person's strength was not enough and could not see the movement of a god. That eyewitness is a god son expert. His strength is only 2 realms away from a god king. He should be able to more or less capture the minute energy fluctuations. Furthermore, according to the people from the Ice and Snow Mountain Villa, that god king expert's soul orb has already shattered. It happened one day after that god king expert disappeared. Dead. Chill. Lower your voice. Do you want to die? One of the 2 hurriedly covered the other's mouth. He looked around in horror. When he found that there was nothing abnormal, he let out a sigh of relief and said in a low voice, "This matter has caused a huge uproar. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that the Ice and Snow Mountain Villa's enemies came looking for us. However, a battle between god experts is earth-shattering. However, there were no traces of battle in Yuyin City that day. There were also no traces of battle within 100,000 miles of the city. Moreover, this isn't the end. These disappearances started more than half a year ago. At the very beginning, it was the disappearance of some small mortal stage cultivators. It wasn't until a few divine underworld powerhouses disappeared that many people started to pay attention to them. A divine underworld powerhouse is already a high-ranking member of a force. The two quickened their pace, and their whispers gradually faded away. Yin Nuoxing and the others retracted their gazes. They looked at each other and saw a trace of doubt and seriousness in each other's eyes. Then, they all looked at Xueqing. She was the only disciple of the Ice and Snow Mountain Villa here. Seeing their questioning gazes, Xueqing couldn't help but bitterly smile. She nodded and said in a low voice, "The encampment in Yuyan City has indeed spread the news of Elder Yu's disappearance. At first, we didn't pay much attention to it. We thought that Elder Yu was bored in Yuyan City and wanted to go out for a walk. However, one day later, we saw that Elder Yu's soul bead had shattered. The soul bead contained a trace of that person's soul energy. If that person died, the soul bead would automatically shatter." Yin Nuoxing also frowned. Even Xueqing had confirmed that this matter was true. Then, the death of the god underworld expert couldn't be fake. The problem was that it had been going on for more than half a year. If all the so-called disappearances were done by enemies, it wouldn't be impossible under normal circumstances. However, Yuyan City was currently in a special situation. It couldn't be that all the enemies of the various forces had come to Yuyan City to seek revenge, right? Let's go to the manor first. Don't worry about it. If this matter is true, it's not up to us to care. Even a god underworld expert has fallen. If we go over, we won't be enough. Yin Nuoxing shook her head and interrupted the contemplation of Shui Gu and the others. Then, she slowly walked towards the street. Behind her, Shui Gu and the others nodded and hurriedly chased after her. It was indeed not up to them to care about this matter. The Azure Cloud restaurant was also in the east of Yuyan City. It wouldn't take too long to walk from there to the manor of the Nine Deities Temple. It would only take half an hour. However, along the way, Yin Nuoxing and the others were used to releasing their soul energy to listen to the news coming from the streets and alleys. What they heard the most was the so-called disappearances. God Underworld. Disappearances. Death. Disappearances. These few words caused Yin Nuoxing and the others to become more and more frightened. Moreover, it wasn't just one God Underworld expert. They even heard it from late at night until early in the morning. Panic involuntarily appeared in their minds and spread to every corner of their bodies. They hurriedly quickened their pace. For a time, the matter of the so-called disappearance of the divine netherworld experts was spread throughout the streets and alleys, and it was strange and terrifying as it suffused this city that was becoming more and more chaotic. It was even to the extent that they were able to see that there were gods asking about this matter on the streets, and it caused them to gasp. Even people of this level have started to seek information themselves. So to what extent has the situation become? Don't go out tonight. Stay at home peacefully and don't separate. It's best if a group of people stay in the same room and don't be too far away from each other. Yin Nuoxing's expression was solemn as she said to Shui Gu and the others. This matter was extremely strange and made her feel uneasy. Then, young Master Yin. Xueqing was startled. As a girl, she was naturally more attentive than the men. She only felt that Yin Nuoxing's words were a little strange. "I'm fine. In this Yuyan city, there should be people who can touch me. All right, there are still some." Just as Yin Nuoxing said this, he felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly changed his words and smiled bitterly. In fact, even immortal step experts could threaten him. According to the information, those people had all disappeared in an instant. The person who did this must be proficient in concealment. Moreover, even God Underworld experts couldn't detect him. As long as some immortal step experts who specialized in offensive power ruthlessly attacked him, he would be killed instantly. It would be strange if you were fine. Xueqing and Shui Gu both rolled their eyes at him. They had known him for a period of time. How could they not know that Yin Nuoxing wanted to leave them in a safe place while he went to the Yuyan Pavilion? "I'm really fine." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Even underworld emperors might not be able to break through the boundary world that Ling Hongjian opened. Moreover, it could perfectly conceal his aura. He really didn't believe that anyone could do anything to him. "Tonight, we'll gather at the Yuyan Pavilion. Young Master Yin, you can't speak." Xueqing rolled her eyes at him and said lightly. Shui Gu made a sound of acknowledgement and nodded. This made Yin Nuoxing smile bitterly. This was a little awkward. Then you guys be careful. Yin Nuashing sighed. A few minutes later, when they arrived at the entrance of the manor, Yin Nuashing and the others were stunned. They heard some soft laughter, and he could tell that it was Jin Jinwang's laughter. There was also another soft voice that he had never heard before. It was definitely not the voice of a beautiful woman. Graceful and elegant. This was the first impression he had when he saw her. Her fine black hair flowed down like flowing clouds. He could see her covering her mouth and smiling. Her pure white dress made her look even more like a fairy. She kept wiping the corners of her eyes with her fair, jade-like hands, and there seemed to be a tear flowing out. "Ah, you're back. I have something to tell you." Jin Jinwang, who was sitting in the courtyard, couldn't help but smile when he saw the 5 people standing at the entrance. He looked at Yin Nuashing, who was at the front, and smiled as he waved his hand. Yin Nuashing sighed softly. He raised his foot slightly, and just as he took a step, his vision suddenly darkened like a dead silence. Everything around him disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Jin Jinwang, that woman, Shui Gu, and the others were gone. The courtyard was gone. Only darkness remained in the world. Chapter 146. It was a pitch-black world, a pitch-black space. No matter where he looked, he could only see pitch-black darkness. It was as if he was looking up at the starry sky. That step, left him with only pitch-black darkness. His hands were still in that position, and he could still feel a touch of warmth in his arms. The only light he could feel was his own body. Her white hands, her wine-red hair, and her pair of wine-red spirit eyes. The moment they collided with the pitch-black eyes, the two gradually calmed down, and the frantic beating of their hearts also gradually calmed down. Darkness was the only rhythm in this place. Little she, I don't know. When Yin Nuashing opened his mouth, Yishi already knew what he wanted to ask. She shook her head and sighed. But this feeling is very annoying. Our soul force moves spontaneously. This layer of fluorescent light is our soul's protective barrier, Yishi said faintly, with a bit of seriousness in her voice. A spontaneous soul defense. That was practically the last line of defense. What was here? Darkness. In this pitch-black space where he could only see himself, it was normal to have such a feeling. Perhaps it was fortunate in this pitch-black space. With the two of them here, they would not lose themselves in the boundless darkness. The evil spirit eyes slowly opened, but the 5-colored light gradually disappeared. Only the pupils could be seen turning into different colors, and small arrays appeared around the eyes. Looking through them, he could see darkness, boundless darkness. It was as if the two of them were placed in a pitch-black space. Whether it was the soles of their feet or the top of their heads, they were all covered by pitch-black darkness. Yin Nuashing's throat moved, but he could not hear the sound coming from his body. Even the sound of his heartbeat gradually faded away. He could feel it, could feel his body's reaction. His heart was beating naturally, and his pulse was also beating along with it. His meridians were emitting energy ripples due to the circulation of his origin energy, and his blood was transmitting the warmth of his body. He could feel it all, but he could not feel it. He could not move. He could not control his origin energy. He could not control his spiritual energy. He could not control his soul. His voice gradually disappeared, and his vision was filled with darkness. Even the fragrance on Yi Shi's body disappeared, and the warmth in his embrace was also slowly disappearing. Fear filled every corner of his body. It was as if there was an ancient giant beast standing in the boundless darkness. That invisible pressure, that invisible deterrence, made him feel an uncontrollable fear. Yin Nuashing opened his mouth in a panic. His throat and body were tense because of the force he exerted. However, he couldn't hear that scream. He thought he was roaring, but he could only see him open his mouth and not make a single sound. Yishi was shocked. She hurriedly raised her head and saw Yin Nuashing's panicked look. Even her eyes were a little unfocused and blood-red. It was as if she was about to fall into the darkness and become one with it. It was as if she was about to be swallowed by it and turn into a demon. Darkness. Yishi fiercely bit down on her lips. Her body trembled slightly as she bit down on her dark red lips. A smear of blood dyed the row of pearls red. The pain forced her to stay focused. She knew what this was. She knew what she was facing. A numb feeling invaded her mind. Gradually, she felt that the heartbeats of the two people seemed to have weakened. A trace of confusion flashed across her eyes, and her tightly clenched teeth actually loosened a little. No, depriving the five senses, causing people to go crazy, was it the doing of the people who went missing in Yuyin City? Her small hands clenched into fists as she fiercely bit down. Then, she punched her chest, causing herself to spit out a mouthful of blood. The pain constantly stimulated her nerves. Death of Li Juyu. Yishi's small fists fiercely punched her chest. She spat out mouthful after mouthful of blood, as if it was free. Every time she was about to lose consciousness, she would forcefully call it back. However, this method was no different from drinking poison to quench thirst. There would definitely be a time when she couldn't hold on anymore. Brother is still here. Yishi madly shook her head. The strange pain that came from her body caused her to maintain her consciousness, not allowing the numbness to engulf her. In what seemed to be an eternally dark realm, a person roared towards the sky. The light in those soulless eyes gradually faded, while the chest of the person in his embrace continued to droop. Fresh blood had dyed their clothes red in the courtyard of the Nine Shrine Manor. Looking at Yun Nuoxing, who had disappeared into thin air, Jin Jinwang was stunned. The teacup in his hand fell to the ground. The girl sitting opposite him was also shocked. Her smiling phoenix eyes instantly became calm as she stared at the position where Yun Nuoxing was standing. A drop of cold sweat rolled down her white cheeks. Nuoxing? Just a second ago, they were still fooling around. Looking at Yun Nuoxing, who had suddenly disappeared in front of their eyes, as if she had evaporated into thin air, Shueji's beautiful face turned as white as paper. He thought of that rumor, the rumors of people going missing in the streets and alleys of Yuyin City. It was as if a living person had just disappeared in front of them. Shueqing widened her eyes in shock. Mei Mao's eyes, which had always been filled with intelligence, were now filled with shock. That sudden incident, the emotions that had suddenly rushed into her heart, caused her body to turn cold. She even forgot to breathe. Missing? Jin Jinwang also thought of the rumors that had been circulating in the streets and alleys recently. At that time, he did not think much of it, but now, seeing Yun Nuoxing disappear in front of him, he was also stunned for a while. However, he was ultimately a Shunming expert. His temperament was naturally not something that an ordinary person could compare to. In just a breath's time, he regained his composure. With a wave of his sleeve, a golden light shot towards where Yun Nuoxing had been standing. Bang! The golden light hit the ground, but it didn't send dirt and rocks flying as expected. Instead, on the ground, an array formation about 10 feet wide gradually appeared under everyone's shocked gazes. Moreover, half of the golden array formation was actually dyed with scarlet red, a blood sacrifice formation, and a Saint Art formation at that. Seeing the red, Jin Jinwang frowned. A formation that used human blood and a lifetime of cultivation to create. Who would do such a vicious thing to the people of Yuyin City? And who is it that dared to capture people in front of him? It has already been moved. This formation is very powerful. Jin Jinwang looked at the blood-red formation and pondered for a while before shaking his head. He was not proficient in formations and could not understand these things. However, this should be the culprit that had caused the entire city to be on high alert. He just did not know where this formation had been moved to and why he could not sense it at all. Old Hua, inform the Water Spear Hall and call Old Water over. Seeing the formation gradually disappear and shatter, Jin Jinwang's eyes surged with sharpness. He raised his head and roared at the hall. Whoosh! There was no sound in the hall. All that could be seen was a ball of red and blue energy, suddenly piercing through the roof and shooting into the sky. After reaching the apex, it suddenly trembled and disappeared. Do you need help? Seeing how nervous you are, is that your disciple? The graceful woman, Mei Mao, turned to Jin Wang and asked softly. Jin Wang frowned and thought for a long time. In the end, he shook his head and sighed. I'm sorry, little Xian. It has been a long time since we last met. We should have a good chat. I didn't expect something like this to happen. That child is a pure piece of jade. My 9 gods temple owes him a favor. I want to watch him grow up and see what he will be like in the future. Speaking of this, even at this critical moment, Jin Wang could not help but smile when he thought of Yun Nuoxing's bright and clean smile. So I have to find him. His smile instantly vanished, and his golden eyes flashed with sharpness. Daring to capture the person he wanted to protect, right under his nose, he was tired of living. I'll help. Hearing this, the elegant woman called Little Xian stood up and tucked her long hair behind her back. She smiled at Jin Wang. Jin Wang smiled bitterly. He had forgotten that she was actually someone who could not sit still. After so many years, she had not changed much. She was still lively when she should be, and those idiots were still alive and well. There are only 2 reasons why those people are looking for him. First, they are after Ling Hongjian. Second, it is because of his abnormally powerful soul. And Yishi, the news that Ling Hongjian was with Yun Nuoxing had spread like wildfire. Almost everyone in Yuyin City had heard about it. Those who were looking for Yun Nuoxing were almost certainly after Ling Hongjian. Even if the Divine Sword ranked 2nd in the Divine Sword record on the Divine Weapon ranking was incomplete, it was enough to cause a fight among high-level gods. Even those at that level would come out. The other reason was very likely because of Yishi. She was once an expert at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld. Her soul and body were very powerful. Even if her cultivation was cut off completely, the remaining energy was still not to be underestimated. Since someone needed blood as a sacrifice for the holy spell array, they would need a large amount of powerful flesh and soul. These 2 people were the best choices. Looking at Shui Gu and the others who had calmed down, Jin Wang coughed dryly and said in a low voice, Time is of the essence. I won't say anything else. Hearing this, Shui Gu, Shui Qing, and the others nodded fiercely. They looked at each other and then disappeared from the manor. They also wanted to look for Yun Nuoxing. The latter had disappeared in front of their eyes. If they could not find him and let him die like this, it would be a knot in their hearts. It would become a demon in their hearts. Moreover, they still remembered the many rumors and the time limit. One day. All the rumors said that no one could survive one day, even if they were gods. In the endless darkness, there was a faint glow. That glow was extremely dim, as if it was about to be drowned by the tide of darkness. Looking closer, he realized that it was 2 faintly glowing figures. A black figure was kneeling on the ground. His eyes were lifeless, and his arm was supporting a petite figure. 2 small fists would smash towards himself, and the former every once in a while. The 2 small fists were mottled with blood. Yun Nuoxing, who was kneeling on the ground, seemed to be in a state where her 5 senses were completely sealed. It seemed that there was still one of her senses hanging there. She was in a strange state of suspended animation. Even her bodily functions were suppressed to the lowest level. She looked like a dying person. At least, let me have 1 second of strength. Yishi murmured. Yishi murmured softly. Her eyes were as heavy as 1,000 pounds, as if they were about to close at any moment. The majestic soul force wrapped around her into an invisible cocoon, isolating her from the darkness that was constantly eroding her. At this moment, she was filled with hatred. She knew what this thing was and knew its composition, but she didn't have the strength to bring the Yun Nuo planet away from here. The song of death and farewell of the blood sacrifice was a powerful saint spell array. Even she, who was once at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld, did not have much confidence in escaping if she was trapped in the array. Legend said that when the song of death and farewell was completed, the world would wail and even the gods would sigh. The 7 emotions were cut off, the 6 desires were cut off, and the 5 senses were cut off. Once the 5 senses were completely sealed, it would be the end of one's life. Unless the gods intervened, no one would be able to survive. After a long time, Yishi could feel the soul power that was hovering around her gradually weakening. She could not help but sigh. She raised her small hand and was about to knock Yin Nuashing, but she put down her hand and laughed bitterly. She mocked herself. To think that I was so talented. In less than half a lifetime, I became at the peak of the Emperor of the Underworld and was within reach of the Emperor of the Gods. The Abyss Shrine destroyed my life but gave me a second life. But I was defeated by a mere mortal-level brat. From then on, I abandoned everything in the past and named myself Yishi. I thought that I would be able to accompany Brother Nua peacefully for the third life he gave me. I didn't expect. The cocoon formed by the soul power was being squeezed by the invisible pressure of the darkness outside. It sounded like an egg being cracked, as if something was being broken. Forget it. Yishi hugged Yin Nuashing with both hands and gave up struggling. In those wine-red eyes, there was some heartbreaking despair. She leaned her head against his chest. She did not want to deny it, but she had never admitted it in front of him. This period of time, these short 10 months, was the happiest time of her 3 lives. It was the first time she tasted the taste of happiness. When you were born, I was not born. When I was born, you were already old. I am willing to accompany you to the Yellow Springs. Her small mouth softly murmured. Her small white hands gently caressed Yin Nuashing's face, and she smiled foolishly. If only I had met you earlier. How good would that have been? When I was 10 years old, when time stopped, if I had met you, perhaps I wouldn't have ended up like this. Kacha? With a loud sound, the soul barrier shattered. The overwhelming darkness surged forward like a tidal wave, swallowing Yishi and Yin Nuashing. She felt as if her entire body was floating, and her body was gradually disappearing. Big brother. See you in the next life. Yishi smiled brightly. Although she could no longer see, she could still feel it. She lifted her small mouth and pressed it against Yin Nuashing's face. Immediately, the taste of death swept over like a storm. It's finally over. This time it's time to die. Clang. Just as Yishi had given up all resistance due to despair, a speck of light suddenly lit up in the endless darkness. Soon after, the tide of darkness hurriedly retreated as if it had met its natural enemy. The 2 figures once again appeared in the incomparably dark space, causing her to be startled, just as she was helpless due to the death-departing song. What had torn apart the darkness? This is... Looking down, Yishi was shocked. It was the pattern on Yin Nuashing's arm that was glowing. Outside her arm, a silver needle was swaying and shining. The azure light was only 2 meters long, but it seemed to be able to illuminate the entire dark world. Linghong Jian. Chapter 147. Divine Sword Linghong. When its master's life is threatened, it automatically protects its master. And this power, feeling the vast and unparalleled power flowing through the tiny silver needle, Yishi was a little shocked. The surrounding space was constantly cracking. Although she couldn't see it, she could clearly feel that the chaotic power of space was causing the dark space to tremble. The power of space has disappeared. Discovering that she had lost connection with the power of space again, Yishi's eyes narrowed slightly. She was finally sure that the power of space had been lost because of the appearance of Linghong. The resplendent sword light cut through space like a bolt of lightning. It was faster than light, and Yishi didn't even see it. She only saw that the darkness that enveloped the entire space had been cut open, leaving behind a giant crack that was 1,000 feet wide. The chaotic power of space swallowed up the darkness and shattered it. This was the spontaneous attack of the divine weapon, and it was even stronger than Yin Nuashing's all-out attack. A terrifying energy fluctuation came from space. Yishi hurriedly lowered her head and finally saw that the magic array hidden in the void, the Song of Departure, was slowly emerging. The golden lines were like demons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. That ferocious appearance made her frown. This isn't an ordinary blood sacrifice. The Saint Art magic array has been distorted by this evil power. Yishi couldn't help but murmur. The Saint Art magic array was famous for its divine power, and the most unique thing about it was its divine power. If it lacked that holy aura, its power would be greatly reduced, and the Saint Art that was no longer divine would become the most evil power. The Linghong sword shone with a brilliant light. That tiny silver needle seemed to have the power to shake the entire world. 3 streaks of sword light pierced through the space. The distance of millions of miles was covered in less than an instant. Because of this, the void collapsed into 3 complete circular pieces. Boom! The silver blue sword light was hundreds of feet wide, and it shot out from an unknown corner of Yuyin City. The power to cut through space and the void caused the sky above Yuyin City to suddenly explode. The sound of space shattering spread across the entire city like an erupting volcano. The 3 rays of dazzling blue light swept over everyone's head, causing them to quickly raise their heads. What they saw was a dark yellow wall that looked like a wriggling wave. A terrifying spatial storm raged in the sky, and the chaotic and violent pressure descended, causing everyone's legs to go soft. However, miraculously, the 3 streaks of sword light did not cut through Yuyin City. Instead, they brushed past Yuyin City. The moment the silver light appeared, it disappeared without a trace. However, even in that instant, space had collapsed. That's Linghong Jian. A familiar ray of sword light flashed over their heads, causing Jin Wang and the others who were searching for Yun Nuoxing to be shocked. Their flashing figures sped up, but they stopped in the next moment, including Jin Wang. They didn't know where the ray of sword light came from. Within the Song of Death and Departure formation, Yishi looked at the formation that had faded a lot under Linghong Jian's 3 strikes. However, it still didn't disappear. Her eyes flickered, and she bit her red lips, muttering to herself, Linghong Jian's attack can definitely tear through space. However, the Song of Death and Departure formation is a type of illusion formation. Linghong Jian, with his flaws, might not be able to completely break through it. The golden and red energy matrices, as well as the runes imprinted on the formation, paused for a moment before they started to repair themselves. Furthermore, the speed was extremely fast. If they waited for a few more minutes, this strange formation might activate again. At that time, Yun Nuoxing and Yi Shi, who had lost Linghong Jian's protection, would still die. Let's go all out. Yishi nodded heavily. Her body nimbly escaped from Yun Nuoxing's embrace. Standing in the dark void, she took a deep breath. Immediately, her 2 slender hands started to dance rapidly. Hand seals quickly appeared, and following the changes in her hand seals, the spiritual strength between her eyebrows also started to stir. Pucci, after the hand seals changed, Yishi's face turned red. She spat out a mouthful of blood, which turned into a blood mist and fused into the hand seals. The terrifying spiritual strength roared out from between her eyebrows and rushed into her hands. A dot of black light slowly appeared where her palms met. Break! The dark dot of light trembled slightly, and a formation suddenly appeared. It was a pitch-black forbidden formation, and a wisp of black flame was jumping within it. Yishi's small hands suddenly clenched, and with a shout, she fiercely smashed it into the Song of Death and Departure formation. The 2 opposing forces, under the extreme suppression, exploded with a terrifying destructive power, causing this shaky space to become even more unstable. After a moment, with a soft sound, both of them were destroyed. Bang! Following the disappearance of the Song of Death and Departure formation, Yishi saw that the entire black space had changed. A huge vortex, like a giant mouth that could devour people, suddenly opened and continuously expanded. After the appearance of the huge vortex, the space also stabilized in the span of a few breaths. What appeared in her line of sight once again was a huge formation, beating like a heart. Half of it was blue and half of it was bright red, and it was engraved on the ice-cold wall. The golden and blood-red lines were like hundreds of slowly crawling little snakes, constantly wriggling and wrapping around the huge formation. The place that appeared once again was a dusky space with a lot of dust floating in. Faint, ice-cold moonlight entered from the outside, shining on the dark red floor. The dust passed through the light like particles, and the purple wall was particularly eye-catching. Below the wall, there was a row of tall bronze statues. This was the Serene Flame Pavilion. Yin Nuashing had come here once before. The Serene Flame Pavilion. I'm actually back here. A soft voice sounded from behind, causing Yi Shi's heart to fiercely jump. She hurriedly turned her gaze and saw Yun Nuashing sitting there with a blank expression. He was even continuously rubbing his temples. His handsome face was pale, and he seemed to be in great pain. At this moment, in this dark and gloomy hall, golden veins covered the entire hall like blood vessels. On those veins, there were actually figures. The golden veins wrapped around those figures layer by layer. Furthermore, it could be felt that those figures' energy, vitality, and even souls and mental energy were being extracted by the golden veins and then poured into the azure formation. Seeing this scene, Yin Nuashing could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. He slowly stood up and walked to the person closest to them. He slightly released his yuan qi, illuminating the place. What he saw was a shriveled body. The flesh and blood had already disappeared, and there was a large pool of blood on the floor. There was still some calmness on his face, as if he did not feel any pain when he died. This person was a divine underworld expert when he was alive. Even he is dead. Moreover, there is no one alive here. There is no aura of life in the hall. Yi Shi lowered her head and frowned. She then turned her head and sighed softly. These people were all captured by it. Is this the truth behind the disappearance of people in Yuan City? Yin Nuashing turned his gaze and looked at the formation wrapped in golden and red lines. A strange look flashed across his eyes. He had never heard of a formation that could capture people by itself. Moreover, the method was too strange. When he and Yi Shi were captured, Jin Jinwang was only 5 steps away from them. Behind him stood Shui Ge and the other 3. However, when Yin Nuashing took a step forward, he was caught in the formation. It could only be described as strange. With this formation, I'm afraid that there is no safe place in Yuan City. Even divine underworld experts can be captured. After looking around, Yin Nuashing could not help but sigh when he saw the huge formation. It had been an eventful year. He originally thought that he could peacefully wait for the eruption of the purple night flame in Yuan City. However, a series of events had struck. Little Shi, can you break this formation? Yin Nuashing looked at Yi Shi and asked. I can't. Yi Shi shook her head. She stared at him and said seriously, the Song of Death is a rare formation in the world of formations that uses music as the main source of energy to create a formation. Simply put, this is a formation that uses music as the main source of energy. In the divine realm, there were very few people who learned music. It was a product that was derived from elemental comprehension. There seemed to be many inheritances left behind from the ancient era and the antiquity era. However, what was left behind today were only incomplete records. In the era where other elements and energies were rampant, music was somewhat useless because it was difficult to cultivate. However, there were very few recorded music experts in the ancient books. In the end, all of them became famous divine spirits or even heavenly gods. A single piece of music could shake the entire divine realm. The Song of Death. Yin Nuashing repeated the name of the formation that almost killed them. He took a deep breath. In that dark space, he felt that his 5 senses were about to be sealed. The first thing that was sealed was his hearing. However, he did not hear any music at that time. He did not know how the Song of Death used music to create a formation. Fortunately, Ling Hongjian was here this time. Otherwise, he would have gone completely crazy. Yin Nuashing sighed as he touched the pattern on his right forearm. Ling Hongjian's automatic protection of its master was out of his expectations. However, this kind of thing would not happen every time. This was just an accident. However, there is no need to break it. It has already stopped working, Yi Shi said faintly. Yi Shi said indifferently. Yin Nuoxing quickly looked over. As expected, he saw that the blood sacrifice formation gradually stopped rotating. The golden patterns also slowly disappeared and slowly merged into the wall. The entanglement around those people also disappeared without a trace. In a moment, it disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened. It probably absorbed enough energy. Now, it has stopped rotating temporarily. If I was in my peak state, I would have no problem breaking it, Yishi said and smiled bitterly. Although she said that she did not miss it, she actually missed the time when she was still a strong emperor of the underworld. She had to start cultivating again and experience all kinds of things again. She did not know when she would be able to cultivate back to the emperor of the underworld. All right, Xiaosh. Yin Nuoxing seemed to have thought of something and looked at Yishi. Yishi was stunned. Before she could say anything, Yin Nuoxing said unhappily, "Just now, in a song of death. Actually, you could have escaped by yourself, right?" Yishi was slightly taken aback. Her eyes met those pitch-black eyes, and her small mouth opened slightly. However, those words slipped out of her mouth and fell back into her stomach. She couldn't help but lower her head. Like a child who had done something wrong, she lightly nodded and said, "But you couldn't come out, so I didn't leave." Yin Nuoxing was slightly stunned. He smiled bitterly and rubbed Yishi's head with his palm. He did not say anything. Ta, ta, ta. The sudden sound of footsteps shocked Yin Nuoxing and Yishi. They looked at each other and released their soul power at the same time. It surged towards the entrance of the main hall. Then, their expressions changed. Chapter 148. The sound of footsteps approached from the distance, rapidly approaching the entrance of the hall. It sounded like 1,000 people were running at the same time. The disturbance was so great that it caused the floor of the hall to tremble slightly. In just a few seconds, they had reached the depths of the hall. Clang! The door was violently pushed open, and the sound rang through the hall. There were even a few echoes. Afterwards, a large group of people charged in with shining weapons. The aura of slaughter flooded the hall, and the cold aura vanished immediately. As soon as the aura of slaughter rushed in, it startled Yin Nuoxing and Yi Sisi. They looked around, and when they saw the several hundred people brimming with killing intent, they could not help but wipe away their sweat. 2 pairs of eyes met the several hundred pairs of eyes. Yin Nuoxing became rather stunned by the murderous gazes. Killing intent? Killing intent directed at him? Kill! A murderous roar rang out from somewhere, causing the originally quiet few hundred people to suddenly become agitated. They let out a furious roar in unison. Bright and dazzling energy torrents cut through the silence of the night, creating a whistling sound in the air. Boundless energy blasted towards the 2 people from Yin Nuoxing from all directions. The momentum of the few hundred powerhouses attacking together was extremely spectacular. Yin Nuoxing's face changed slightly when he saw such a large-scale stream of energy. He extended his hand in a hurry, and a huge formation appeared in the hall. The several hundred streams of energy passed through the formation, but they paused slightly. Sizzle, sizzle. Endless streams of energy passed through the formation viciously, but the formation did not move at all. All the energy dispersed into nothingness, turning into pure energy that drifted in the air. As Yin Nuoxing forcefully endured the combined attacks of all the experts, Yishi took advantage of his obstruction and quickly waved her hands. A black formation that was several hundred meters wide gradually appeared, standing behind the 2 of them like a huge black disk. "What are you doing? Even if you want to gang up on me, you need a reason." After the formation appeared, the restless crowd suddenly fell silent. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath, frowned, and yelled out. Who had they offended? It was fine that they had accidentally fallen into the formation of the death of departure, but now that they had escaped with great difficulty, many experts had charged in and attacked them without saying anything. If it were not for the fact that the 2 of them had many tricks up their sleeves and were not weak, they would have been killed long ago. "Are you an expert from the Serene Flame Pavilion?" At this moment, a middle-aged man in black robes stepped out from the crowd. He had his hands behind his back, and every step he took felt heavy. He stood in front of everyone, clasped his hands together, and spoke in a deep voice. No. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and shook his head. Both of them wanted to tear down the Serene Flame Pavilion. How could it be someone from the Serene Flame Pavilion? You're not? Suddenly, another sneer was heard, causing Yin Nuoxing and Yi Shi to frown slightly. They turned their gazes and heard the voice continue. If the two of you are not from the Serene Flame Pavilion, why are you here? Moreover, the corpses on the ground are all people who have recently disappeared from the Serene Flame City. My son also disappeared mysteriously. With a strand of his soul in his soul orb, we finally found the Serene Flame Pavilion with great difficulty. But when we entered the Serene Flame Pavilion, his soul orb shattered. What about the people from the Serene Flame Pavilion? Why are you here? The middle-aged man in black robes pondered for a while and asked again. I don't know where the people from the Serene Flame Pavilion have gone. When we woke up, we saw this. Yin Nuoxing shook his head gently and clasped his hands together. As for us, we were captured. Saint Spell Array, Song of Death. This array was set up by the people from the Serene Flame Pavilion. It is in the wall behind us. The range of the array almost covers the entire Serene Flame City. Because of the blood sacrifice, its original power has been distorted and its purpose has been changed. It can capture people and extract the life, soul, and elemental power of the prey to strengthen itself. Even we had a hard time breaking out of it. When everyone heard this, they all looked behind Yin Nuoxing and Yi Shi. On the wall in the distance, there was a huge array quietly stuck to the wall. Even those who didn't understand arrays could at least tell that this was a very powerful array when they saw the complicated lines and runes that were like a maze. However, at this moment, everyone had a complicated look in their eyes. In the past half a year, there had been a lot of panic in Serene Flame City. Almost every force had people mysteriously disappearing. However, now that they knew that the culprit behind their disappearance was this huge and strange array, they had a strange feeling. Previously, they had made all sorts of guesses based on the various enemies, killing people for their belongings, assassin forces, and so on. They didn't expect the result to be like this. You two puny mortal realm cultivators want to break out of this array that even divine underworld experts can't break out of? Based on what? Stop joking. Hurry up and admit it. You are the ones who set up this array. When that person saw the array, he sneered and looked at Yin Nuoxing coldly with a different emotion. That strange gaze made Yin Nuoxing very uncomfortable. He couldn't help but frown. He couldn't just directly say that it was because of Ling Hongjian that he barely managed to break out of the man-eating array. Now that Jin Wang and the others weren't around, he couldn't guarantee what would happen if he exposed himself like this. Killing people for their belongings wasn't rare in the myriad god world. Everyone, don't be fooled by their appearances. The people of Serene Flame Pavilion are a group of wild beasts that eat people without spitting out their bones. For their own selfish reasons, they caused many forces in Serene Flame City to die. This grudge must be avenged. I'm willing to lead the charge. Kill. That person laughed loudly, but there was an unconcealable coldness in his voice. With a furious roar, he rushed out from the crowd and rushed towards Yin Nuoxing and Ling Hongjian like an arrow released from a bow. The wind from his palm whistled in their ears, and the majestic pressure caused their robes to stick tightly to their bodies. Yin Nuoxing frowned at this person's sudden attack. He opened his palm, and dozens of arrays appeared in the void one after another. Then, they overlapped and were slapped towards that person along with his palm. Bang! When the two palms collided, the array suddenly trembled. The two forces quickly erupted and canceled each other out. Then, the two figures quickly retreated. Yin Nuoxing relied on the superposition of the arrays to create a frightening attack. He only retreated a dozen steps, but that person was sent flying a distance away. Everyone was shocked when they saw that person being sent flying with a single palm. Yin Nuoxing was only a mortal realm expert. How could a 7th-tier immortal realm expert be sent flying just like that? Such a high-level array. How dare you say that you didn't set it up? That person looked at the rotating array on Yun Nuoxing's palm, but he was not angry at all. Instead, he laughed loudly, and the coldness in his voice became even more intense. It's him, that very powerful array kid. With his mortal realm strength, he defeated 7th tier, half-immortal realm Duan Qinghai. I saw him in the Green Cloud restaurant that day. I've seen the girl beside him. On the day of the Abyss Temple's attack, she seemed to be the one who led the group to seal off the entire Yuyan city. Then this kid is the one who possesses Linghong Jian? The kid who broke the sealing array that day? I think so. It said that this guy is the representative of the 9 divine temples. Hearing the discussions around him, Yun Nuoxing knew that things were bad. What he was most afraid of was that the matter of Linghong Jian would be exposed. Now that Jin Wang and the others were not around, if the many experts in front of him attacked together, it would be enough to make him suffer. Ha! Hearing this, the expert who attacked laughed sinisterly. The strange look in his eyes completely turned into greed, and he stared at Yun Nuoxing like a poisonous snake. I don't seem to have any enmity with you, right? Seeing that he no longer concealed his greed, and his expression was full of malevolence and coldness, Yun Nuoxing frowned. He had never seen this person before, nor had he offended him. Why was he so hostile and inciting everyone to attack? Yun Nuoxing did not believe that this was because his son died in the Song of Death, and he was attacked because he saw a suspected expert from the Yuyan Pavilion. Huh? The 7th tier Immortal Step expert laughed angrily and shouted coldly, "My name is Cheng Xuanya." Hearing this name, Yun Nuoxing's eyes narrowed slightly. Then, as if he understood something, he said coldly in a deep voice, "You're from the Cheng clan?" No wonder this guy who called himself Cheng Xuanya targeted him from the beginning. Cheng Tianxing died in his hands. This old guy probably recognized him the moment they met and was here to seek revenge. You can seek revenge in private, if you're not afraid of the 9 divine temples. Also, we're all smart people. Whether I'm from a Yuyan Pavilion or the weaver of this array, you can tell a glance. Your words just now are useless. If you want to fight, do it yourself. I'll take it all. Yun Nuoxing was quiet. With his hands behind his back, he looked indifferently at Cheng Xuanya with his dark eyes and said, "As for the array you mentioned, the Song of Death is a saint spell array. Moreover, it's a divine level array. I'm just a small mortal step cultivator. How can I set up an array that covers the entire Yuyan city?" Cheng Xuanya was stunned. He glanced around and saw that the people behind him were watching with folded arms. Some of them had even put away their weapons. They did not show too much hostility towards Yun Nuoxing because of his words. Just as the latter said, he knew what was going on with a closer look. Moreover, if Yun Nuoxing was the one who set up the array, Jin Wang would have discovered it. TSK, a bunch of old foxes. Seeing this, Cheng Xuanya felt a little helpless. This time, he found the Yuyan Pavilion by following the soul orb of an expert from the Cheng family. When he saw Yun Nuoxing, he immediately recognized him and said that he was his son, who knew that this guy was quite famous in Yuyan City. It was not easy to provoke them to become enemies with Yun Nuoxing. Moreover, there was a huge existence behind Yun Nuoxing. No one knew what Jin Wang's attitude towards Yun Nuoxing. No one dared to act rashly. If the people from the 9 divine temples came looking for them, it would be their turn to be beaten up. Since you can escape from the array, why don't you tell us the method so that we can be on guard in the future? Cheng Xuanya did not give up and continued to sneer. Yun Nuoxing raised his eyes and sighed. This old bastard, he had nothing better to do than to find trouble with others. I used the Linghong sword to break it. I really can't do anything about it. Moreover, the array has stopped operating now. There shouldn't be any movement in a short period of time. Yun Nuoxing glared fiercely at Cheng Xuanya and said indifferently, since he had been recognized, there was no need for him to hide. What about the woman beside you? Nearly a year ago, she invaded Yuyan City on behalf of the Abyss Shrine. I'm not talking nonsense, am I? Cheng Xuanya said indifferently. The hatred in his eyes surged like a tide. Yun Nuoxing killed his son. Chang Xunya wanted nothing more than to pull out his tendons and pull out his bones. However, he was hindered by the 9 divine temples behind the ladder. Even so, he still wanted him to pay the price. At this time, those people seemed to be in high spirits. Just a moment ago, they looked like they were watching with folded arms. Now they were all tensed up. Pairs of sharp eyes pierced Yun Nuoxing's weak spirit. Even though nearly a year had passed since the battle that day, the memory was still fresh. Usually, people would see Yi Shi by Yun Nuoxing's side, but no one said anything. Now that Chang Xunya mentioned her, they could not help but become spirited. They were also very curious. How could a person who was supposed to be dead be by the side of the person who killed her? Seeing Yun Nuoxing mention Yi Shi, Yun Nuoxing lowered his eyes and looked back at her. Coincidentally, she also looked back with a worried expression. This made Yun Nuoxing sigh softly. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Chang Xunya. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. After a long time, Chang Xunya became impatient. He glared and shouted angrily, "It has nothing to do with you. The past is the past. Now, she's my sister. I have the ability to stop the destruction of Yuyan City. I also have the ability to turn your Chang family into ruins. If you don't believe me, you could try." Yun Nuoxing let out a loud roar. That roar was so ferocious that even he couldn't recognize himself. He rarely showed such a domineering side, which could be seen from Yi Shi's shocked expression. When everyone heard this, they all fell silent. Their slightly interested gazes turned away slightly. Although there seemed to be a secret behind this matter that made their gossipy souls burn, no one was in the mood to ask now. Just as Yun Nuoxing had said, it would be fun if they provoked this fellow who was holding the Ling Hong sword. Chapter 149. After being roared at by Yun Nuoxing, Chang Xunya couldn't help but take a step back, and then a wisp of crimson red surged onto his face as his body started to tremble slightly due to his rage. When the surrounding people saw this, they hurriedly moved back slightly, as they were deeply afraid that this old fellow would suddenly attack. After taking a few breaths, Yun Nuoxing glanced at Chang Xunya and coldly snorted. With a light stomp of his foot, a 30-meter wide formation suddenly appeared. With a flash, the two disappeared from their original spot, leaving behind the astonished crowd looking at each other. The silence lasted for a moment before someone finally moved. They walked to the messy corpses on the ground in the center of the hall, identified them one by one, and collected the corpses of their own people. They could not help but sigh. In this trip to Yuyan City, the main dish, the purple night dark flame, had yet to appear, but so many things had already happened. When it officially erupted, who knew how big of a storm it would cause? Many people thought about it, and even had the thought of withdrawing. The current Yuyan City was like a dangerous place that contained countless trials. Cruel trials were being held at all times, and countless people were competing. It was also like the declaration of war by the Abyss Divine Palace on that day. Now that the purple night dark flame was about to erupt, the undercurrents hidden in Yuyan City became active. Some forces that had been preparing for countless years were also itching to make a move. As for those external forces or small forces in the city, it would be very difficult for them to survive this battle. Many forces had already retreated from the city. Today, after seeing this scene in the Yuyan Pavilion, many people wanted to withdraw. Most of them came from distant regions, and their headquarters were very far from Yuyan City. Even if they asked for reinforcements, it would take a long time. It could be said that they were a group of expeditionary forces without any backup. Under such circumstances, every death was a great loss to them. They were isolated and without help. "Brat, just you wait. As long as you're still in Yuyan City, the Chung family will not let you off." Chang Xunya clenched his fists tightly as he watched the many people searching for the corpses of the experts from his faction. A bitter voice slowly echoed in his heart. Naturally, Yun Nuoxing did not know about Chang Xunya's venomous words. Even if he knew, he would only secretly scold Chang Xunya for being an idiot. It was really rare for someone to find fault with him after knowing that he had the Ling Hong sword. Perhaps many people had thoughts about him, but in the end, they did not have the intention to touch him. Unless he took out the Ling Hong sword himself, no one would be able to get it. And if he died, it would fly away in an instant. The Ling Hong sword without an owner was countless times more powerful than when Yun Nuoxing activated it himself. At that time, only high-level gods would have the ability to contend with it. After coming out from a serene flame pavilion, Yun Nuoxing was not in a hurry to leave. She flew to the top of the palace and scanned the entire serene flame city with her evil spirit eye. Finally, she stopped at the bottom. She still did not see anything and could not help but sigh. Tilting her head and glancing at Yun Nuoxing, Yishi knew what he was thinking and said softly, "There is indeed something wrong with this serene flame city." Brother Nuo's feeling is not wrong. Little Shi, you also think so? Yun Nuoxing looked at her in surprise. Yes. Yishi gently nodded her chin and said softly, "I already felt it when I came that day. When I laid down the forbidden array to seal the entire serene flame city, I clearly felt a resistance, as if something was blocking the transmission of energy. But when I carefully looked for it, I could not find it. In the past half a year, I asked that old man to take a look, but he did not find anything abnormal in the serene flame city. If there is nothing abnormal, then there is something wrong. I feel that the serene flame pavilion is also playing a game, a very big game." Yun Nuoxing put a finger to his mouth and smiled mysteriously. His long hair fluttered in the wind, making him look particularly charming under the icy blue moonlight. Brother Nuo always says that Murong Shui Ji smiles like a woman. Little Shi also thinks that Brother's smile is very seductive. Yishi rolled her eyes and muttered, "Ugh." Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Shaking his head, he flapped his 6 wings and flew higher. Pointing his finger below, Yun Nuoxing smiled and said, "Look, the entire serene flame city, the serene flame pavilion, and the purple night flame above. My guess is based on these 3. Hearing this, Yishi turned around and carefully looked at the serene flame city, then looked at the other 2 places. She raised her eyebrows thoughtfully, then looked at Yun Nuoxing and said, "Brother Nuo, are you saying that the creator of the serene flame city, the serene flame pavilion, did something to the entire city?" "Yes, I have such a feeling. Since the serene flame city was built by them, then, as the creator, they can change the layout of the city as they wish. In addition, we saw the blood sacrifice array in the serene flame pavilion, the song of death of departure. I guess that the serene flame pavilion did something to the entire serene flame city." After Yishi heard this, she thought for a while and nodded her head in agreement. She then looked at the entire city and muttered, "I'm afraid that the person controlling the death song from the hidden flame pavilion is trying to intimidate people. He wants to chase those who covet the purple night dark flame out of hidden flame city." Recently, I've seen many people escaping from hidden flame city. I'm a little worried. Yun Nuoxing frowned and tightened his grip on Yishi. His 6 wings flapped fiercely, and his figure rode the wind as he sped towards the manor in the east. One could even hear the sound of his 6 wings flapping as he sped towards the manor in the east. In the manor of the 9 shrines, there was an extremely spacious and quiet courtyard. There were also a few secret rooms on the side. One could feel the power of heaven and earth rushing towards this place. It would definitely be much easier to cultivate here. At this moment, there were some figures standing in this courtyard that had been empty for a long time. A young man in a blue robe stood not far away. There were a few water dragons circling around his body. Vast energy waves were emitted from his hands. In the void, there were many arrays that appeared like a ball that enveloped him. Where his palms were facing each other, there was actually a golden array that was slowly flowing. The divine aura caused golden ripples in the air. It was extremely beautiful. "Old water, hurry up. That kid has been lost for half a day. If you can't find him soon, he will become a corpse." At the head of the crowd, the Jin Jinwang king, the blue-robed young man, could not help but urge. When the blue-robed young man heard this, a few veins popped out on his head and arms. His waving hands suddenly stopped. He could not help but turn around and roar, "Damn it! Why are you rushing me? Is it your illegitimate child, or what? The person who came was naturally the Water God King, who was called out from the Water God Palace. The Water God King, who was far away across a large region, received an urgent message and rushed over without stopping. Along the way, he opened countless teleportation arrays and rushed through the void. When he finally arrived at Yuyin City, he did not even have time to catch his breath before he was urged to find someone. If Shui Xia did not bring him a cup of water, he would have been exhausted to death. Do I need to hide my illegitimate child? That is a supreme treasure. A flawless supreme treasure. Hurry up and find him. Jin Jinwang roared at the top of his voice, causing the Water God King to be stunned. Supreme treasure? Flawless? What the hell? However, even though the Water God King was scolding, he didn't slow down his actions. Instead, he sped up. Although he didn't know what the Golden God King was talking about, he knew that the person who was so important to him must be very important to him. He didn't dare to delay any longer. A few more formations appeared in the void as he quickly searched for the formations that could be arranged in Yuyin City. On the side, Yuyin's jade-like hands were tightly clenched due to nervousness. Ming and Little Purple Soul were also anxiously clutching Yuyin's red robe. When they heard that Yin Nuoxing was captured, although they appeared to be calm, they were more anxious than anyone else. They had already run all over the eastern part of Yuyin City. When they returned, they were completely exhausted and had to be supported by the two little girls. Little brat, you promised elder sister that you would live well. I won't allow you to die. Quietly stomping her foot, Yu Yin's beautiful eyes nervously stared at the Water God King in front of her. Her jade-like hands were already wet, and even her sparkling forehead had a few drops of sweat flowing down. A sudden cry of surprise was heard. Everyone quickly turned around and saw the Water God King was stunned. He was holding the Saint Array in his hand, and his eyes were flickering. What's the matter? Hurry up and say it. Jin Jinwang wiped off his cold sweat and hurriedly shouted. Just a moment ago, the array disappeared. The Water God King took the time to wipe his face and couldn't help but let out a dry laugh. In his senses, the connection with the array was suddenly cut off. He'd get to find the array core of the array. Moreover, the disappearance was very sudden. It was as if the array had stopped operating. Disappeared? What do you mean by disappeared? Jin Jinwang was stunned for a moment and hurriedly ran into the Water God King's array. He grabbed the Saint Array and carefully sensed it. Indeed, there was a feeling of emptiness. He was instantly dumbfounded. Wasn't it fine just a moment ago? He could follow the traces of energy and find the melon. Why did it suddenly break? I don't know. It should be that the array suddenly stopped operating. The Water God King shook his head. Then go and find him. That kid should still be under the control of the array. Finding him is the same as finding the array core. Jin Jinwang roared angrily. He injected a strand of divine sense that had the appearance of Yin Nuoxing into the Saint Array. When the array received the energy, it trembled slightly and then suddenly expanded. Hey, old man, that's not the way to use the divination. You're so reckless. This array is going to... The Water God King was shocked by Jin Jinwang's reckless actions. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and grabbed Jin Jinwang. Just as he shouted, he was stunned. He turned his head and looked at the high-frequency rotation of the Saint Array. It seemed like there was a similar aura approaching. What do you want? Seeing that he was stunned, Jin Jinwang hurriedly asked. It's coming. Water God King stared blankly at the rapidly trembling golden disk. Just as he finished his sentence, he heard a violent gust of wind. It was extremely noisy in the silent night sky. Everyone hurriedly raised their heads and saw a young man with 6 wings. He was rushing over from afar with the gust of wind and thunder. Why are there so many people? His figure rushed into the courtyard, his 6 wings shrinking behind him like a screen. Yin Nuoxing saw that everyone was looking at him in a daze. He couldn't help but be stunned and laugh awkwardly. Little Star, are you all right? Seeing that Yin Nuoxing had returned, Yu Yin and the 2 girls heaved a huge sigh of relief. They couldn't help but transmit their voices to him. Blinking his eyes, Yin Nuashing looked at Yu Yin and revealed a reassuring smile. He also transmitted his voice. Don't worry. I've made you worry. Kid, you're fine? It's a miracle. A few of those old Shunming geezers died. You're the only one who escaped. Seeing that he was safe, Jin Jinwang also heaved a sigh of relief. He patted him on the shoulder. Then his expression changed and he asked in a deep voice, So, what's going on? Seeing that Jin Jinwang's expression had darkened, Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh. Then he slowly recounted what had just happened. Song of Death. Regarding this name, the others didn't think much of it. On the other hand, the Water God King seemed to have heard something incredible as he jumped up. This name was a symbol of a miracle in the array field. To integrate energy that wasn't a basic element into an array, this was the first successful array. It had a great significance to the entire array field. Seeing this rather gentle and refined young man who looked like a weak scholar suddenly open his eyes wide after hearing these 3 words, he pounced over like a wolf. That fanatical look caused Yin Nuashing's clothes to be soaked in cold sweat. Tell me, where's the core of this song of death? What's the effect? What happened to the people he controlled? How big is the range of the array? What elements are there in it? What's the composition? How many charms are there? Spitting saliva everywhere, Yin Nuashing felt that his soul was about to shatter when this gentle-looking young man grabbed him by the shoulder and shook him. Bang! A muffled sound suddenly rang out, causing everyone to shake violently. Soon after, they saw the Water God King drawing an arc in the sky, heavily falling onto the ground and fainting. Brother Nuo was shaken to death by you. Yishi pouted and glared fiercely at the person on the ground. Everyone smiled bitterly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.